Hey everyone, guess what? We do not have ugly swag. We have spaced out radio gear that you're going to want to wear. Why? Because no one wants to wear ugly clothing. So head on over to spacedoutradio.com and go shopping today. You'll be glad you did. And it's a great way to support our show. Once you get your gear, send us a picture of you rocking out in your SOR swag. spacedoutradio.com, shop there today, and make yourself look good.
Welcome, everyone, to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. Yes, we are back in the building and ready to go. It's going to be a fantastic show tonight with Josh Rutledge, talking aliens and UFOs, because the story is so shocking thus far. And we've had things that developed since last me and Josh talked, so should be a fun conversation. Definitely want to make sure we welcome everybody in and see who has come in with the medal positions here. Looks like we got, courtesy of Race Fan, we have Kitty Catty Whack with the gold, we have Race Fan with the silver, and we have Flat 6 with the bronze. Definitely want to thank and welcome everybody in. Kitty Catty Whack saying hi, Rob and all. Hi, Kitty Catty Whack. Thanks for coming on into the After Hours radio show. You know how we do it here. Also, let's see who else has come on in. Paramarv, great idea. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit that like button when you can. It helps the show. Definitely does. Tickles the algorithm, whatever they say out there. Also, let's see, who else do we have? We have Robert Lamont Jr. in the building saying hi, Rob. Hi, Robert Lamont Jr. Thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you showing up. We got the Jaquetta. Hello, friends, jamming to Billy Thorpe, Children of the Sun. Anyone remember that one? Definitely be glad to take a look at that there. We got Roger Murray in the building, keeping us informed. September 20th, which is yesterday, 1972, Roger Murray brought into the world. Happy birthday to Roger Murray. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Roger Murray. Happy birthday to you. Also, we have T-Bone in the building saying cheers. Thanks for coming on in. We got Mel WD-40 getting us lubed up for the show. We got Gory Tiger in the building. Let's see. We have Super Crazy Movie Geek. We want retribution. That's right. That's right. Yes, Mel WD-40 double dose of Rob G. What Mel's referring to is we have a channel. I have a channel called The Social Dig. Would love if anyone and everyone would come and check us out over there. It is, as it shows on the screen, youtube.com/at Mr. Rob G. Just like right there. All right. Angel Makers, thanks for coming on in. We appreciate you showing on up here. Undead Jet as well. Josephus Comedy, thanks for coming in. Benno from Oz, 1975, thanks for showing up. And Crystal J, I see you out there. Poncho Zork, thanks for coming in. But Dr. Combs, thanks for showing up. Andrew and Ohms Trucking. I got to start the podcast side real quick, though. Here we go. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. We're going to have a fantastic show tonight. We're going to be talking aliens and UFOs because the story so far is so shocking. And we've had developments and definitely some good stuff to talk about. Josh Rutledge will be here hours 1 and 2. We'll have Steve Stockton Tells Untold hour 3. Guys, let's go. Greetings, space travelers. Welcome home. You've just tuned your dial to Spaced Out Radio, the only place where you can own the night. I am your host, Mr. Rob G. Tonight, we're broadcasting on our terrestrial affiliates across North America, plus digitally on digital platforms all around the world. Don't forget, you can access all of our archives absolutely free. youtube.com/@spacedoutradio. And while you're there, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Also, don't forget to follow us on X and Instagram at Spaced Out Radio and at Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where the options are endless. You can stay up to date with the SY Newswire. You can get yourself some official Spaced Out swag. Plus, you can rock out to the man you hear right there, Mr. Ron Bumblefithall, and so much more. We're going to have a fantastic show here tonight. We have Josh Rutledge joining us here talking aliens and UFOs because, yes, once again, the story so far is shocking. We are not going to delay any. We're jumping right on into the conversation, bringing Josh Rutledge right on to the stage. Josh, how you doing, sir? How you been?
I'm doing fantastic, Rob. Thanks for having me on. It's been, like you say, a while, a couple of weeks or so, maybe 10 days, something like that. It'd be a great conversation to have tonight.
Definitely. And just when, we just talked a couple months ago about where we were up to that point, and we had some good things to say, but there was still a lot of inactivity. But as you said, since we've talked, there's been some things that have popped up that are definitely worth talking about. And the thing I want to start out with is Threei Atlas. So Threei Atlas, this week, maybe 40, 50 kilometer, they don't know, they're unsure, size object coming into the solar system from interstellar space faster than any other object has ever traveled through our solar system, which is bananas just on the surface. And then it's doing weird things. It hasn't been behaving like a comet, but I guess closer we get to October 3rd, I want to say, is when it passes Mars. We should have a great look at it. What did you think about this when the news broke? Have you been following it? And let's hear from you on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really cool. Just the fact that, we're getting yet another kind of, a rocky body, let's say, that's entering our solar system. I just watched something the other day on YouTube that, kind of broke down some of the weird things about it. One of them being that it's really far away from the sun at this stage, and yet it's already starting to off gas. And that off gassing is blowing towards the sun as opposed to away from the sun, which is odd. Which, can lead you down a whole different, rabbit hole, if you will, of speculation of, all different sorts of things. Is this a living creature? And it off gases, and so that's why it's blowing off. The other thing that I saw that's really weird is that it's composed predominantly of CO2, as opposed to, I think most of them have usually been, composed of like either iron or hydrogen, and it's like water, ice, and stuff like that. And that's what the off gassing is. So is there something about being mostly CO2 and the off gassing somehow goes to the sun? And then lastly, I'll just throw this in there. The other thing that kind of makes me think about is Project Hail Mary from Andy Weir. One of the kind of key elements of that book is that there's some sort of weird, what they call microphage, like this bacteria that is consuming their sun. And so, it makes me wonder, like, all this stuff that's off gassing and going towards the sun, is it because it eats photons or something? I don't know. It's all kinds of really cool stuff. Whether it actually be alien in the form of like crafted by extraterrestrial and sitting here. I don't know. It's hard for me to speculate on that, but it's still really neat. We've got this body that we have an opportunity to learn a whole lot of information about the structure of our galaxy from as it passes by.
Very interesting. And I guess theoretically you could call it alien, right? Because it's not from here. It may not be an actual NHI, right? But it's definitely something foreign. And here's the thing that just keeps me coming back to it. And I said this before, it's just like the Peru mummies, right? Where everybody came out, big story, everybody laughed it off, blew it off. And I always was like, you know what? Let's just kind of sit it right here, because we just don't know. Let's get some answers on what it is we're looking at. And I'm feeling the same way about Threei Atlas, only because as the days go on, scientists are still like, we don't really know. We think, but we really don't know. And that's concerning if you think about what Avi Loeb is saying. And once again, Avi Loeb is putting himself on the line, I feel like, once again, by making a statement like this, because I feel like once it passes Mars, if they take an image of it and it's just this big rock, never was extraterrestrial intelligence, then what happens next time Avi Loeb comes out and says, the same thing?
Yeah, I mean, yes, you're right. I mean, it's his credibility is definitely at risk. I think it to me, it's the same as the people who are like, we're going to have open contact in 2026. If that date comes and goes, it's like the Mayan calendar situation, right? Like, well, we misinterpreted or whatever. Well, then your credibility is forever impacted by that misinterpretation.
And I'll tell you what, I interviewed Steve Bassett recently, and he kind of gave me that energy a little bit, because he's been famously known for saying that we're pretty close to disclosure, which truthfully, anytime he says that, I kind of agree with him, because based on the steps that we need to get to that disclosure point, we're literally right there. So theoretically, disclosure is right around the corner. But if you say it too much, then and it doesn't come to fruition, then you end up having a little egg on your face.
Well, and I think it's a little interesting too, like right around the corner in the context of, universal time could be anything within the next 100 years. It could be anything within the next 500 years, 1,000 years. So, when I think about, if somebody says disclosure is right around the corner, I'm thinking like within the next year or two. But honestly, I don't know that we're that close. Simply because I have not seen, unless something's happening behind the scenes, I have not seen the key holders to the information receive any type of significant pressure that would lead them towards saying, you're right. We've got to get ahead of this thing. We've got to get this information out before we have egg on our face. So far, I've not seen anything that would cause them to do so.
Yeah, and it's weird you brought that up, because my perspective on this thing with the Threei Atlas, especially because they don't know what it is, Avi Loeb's giving it a 4 out of 10 on his scale, so 40% chance essentially that this is something intelligent. And so I'm just, I'm looking at it like, if they knew that this was something intelligent coming in, it might explain some of the other things that have happened, some of the other things we've talked about even recently. And we'll end up talking about the video released at the congressional hearing. But just to touch on that briefly real quick, I think that plays a part in this. If you look at everything together, it feels like that some of the things could be more related than not. And it's just like coincidence. Is coincidence really, could we put coincidence on all these different things that have happened recently and just say they're all separate things, they don't line up with each other at all? Or could we look at some of the things and then look at Threei Atlas and say, okay, are they trying to get ahead of it because they released this video, which obviously shows that we're at war with extraterrestrials? So, like, are they setting the stage for something?
Yeah, and then you have also the popularity of, I think it was the Netflix series, 3 Body Problem. Was it on Netflix? I can't remember. what streaming stuff it was on. But the Three Body Problem show that was based off of the book, I hope that I'm not giving anything away, but I will say, spoiler alert, that one of the things that the Three Body Problem talks about is this kind of pending arrival of this other species. And so to your point, you and I have even talked about it, that really disclosure ultimately lies with, and who has the most control over, is the actual ET Galactic Federation, whatever it is themselves. And so, it's perhaps that they have set a date to say, hey, on this date, we're telling the world that we're here, and you have the opportunity to get in front of it. If that's the case, I still don't feel like they're really making great strides to get in front of it.
No, I can agree with you on that. If this was that scenario, yeah, they definitely could be doing a lot more to get in front of it. But there's definitely something going on, something strange that I just haven't put my finger on yet. And we'll end up talking about that a little bit more later. But as far as Threei Atlas goes, one of the things they said it seemed like it was enveloped in plasma, potentially, which gave it its inner glow, right? So when I think about the plasma and its inner glow, I think of some of the things we see here in our skies right now. And okay, is it merely coincidence that this object that nobody really understands, that's coming in from somewhere we really don't see things coming in from, has characteristics of some of these anomalous things that we're seeing in our own skies? What's up with that? Have you thought about that at all?
I have. In fact, it made me, when I first kind of heard that reference, it made me think about the cube inside the sphere that a lot of people report.
Yeah,
like you say, like it, is the sphere plasma? Is it, who knows, something else, just some sort of energetic piece? But yeah, I mean, it does, in that regard, it is similar to things that we see here. But play devil's advocate for a minute. This object, although it originates outside of our solar system, is also similar to other meteors and meteorites that we've tracked over the years. I mean, it's still an object tumbling through space. It's traveling fast enough that it won't be caught in the sun's gravity. Mm-hmm. So it'll continue to slingshot around and pass out of the solar system. But so from a devil's advocate perspective, maybe this is just a different type of meteor that we've never seen before. We've only really been looking for stuff for the last 70 years, as far as meteors and that kind of stuff are concerned. Mm-hmm. When we used to see them before, we would have probably sacrificed some people to them in hopes that they would, bring about rain or something. So, I mean, it's, as far as our humanity's awareness of meteors and the different types and things, I would say that we're in our infancy, or if nothing else, we were just born.
Yeah.
So whether or not this is a normal type of meteor or it is abnormal, I don't think we have enough data to be able to really say.
I agree with you. And really, because here's the thing, anything coming in from space, people could immediately jump on and say, whoa, what is that? And then go down that rabbit hole. But I think there's certain things that are making people feel this way. And it's the fact that these scientists can't get on board on what this is and why it's doing what it's doing and why it happens to be coming in at this particular angle, which allows it to literally pass by the planets and be close enough for observation. Mm-hmm. It's just a lot of things that make it seem weird. But at the end of the day, and I've said this, I'm okay right now with it being just something we haven't discovered yet. Just like you said, we are used to seeing objects that orbit within our solar system, asteroids and comets that are in a orbit, but we're not used to seeing things from another total star system. So it may be that things from other star systems are just different from or behave differently than the things that we have here in ours.
Well, and I was talking to a friend last night about it. You have to realize that most people think about the solar system as being kind of a flat disk, and then all the planets kind of orbit around the sun on this kind of flat disk. And then our solar system is in the Milky Way, also kind of like a flat disk, and we're orbiting around in the Milky Way. But in all actuality, when you think about where you see the Milky Way, the arm of the Milky Way across the sky, that means Earth is tilted. It's perpendicular to the disk of the Milky Way. So our solar system is actually flying this way through the Milky Way. And and as we're moving through the Milky Way, who knows what additional things we will encounter along our journey. This may not even be the first time that an interstellar asteroid has passed through our solar system. Again, we've just never been advanced enough to detect that it was from outside of our solar system.
I can agree with that. I always point to the fact, and that's why I say science is not the cure-all. It's not the answer, but it is a tool that we can use to figure out, to try to answer some of the questions. Because literally in the 90s, and I know if you're old enough, you remember the 90s like yesterday, right? And they didn't even really know that there were so many other galaxies, and so they had no clue at that point.
Yeah.
And it's just weird to think about that, because I was pretty much an adult by then, and scientists didn't know that there were other galaxies and things out there. And it's like they move their goalposts often. And so even in this moment, they're saying it's just a comet because that's what we're used to seeing coming through the system. They will eventually have moved the goalpost to, hey, guess what? There's actually other things out there. And one thing you have to consider is if we already have anomalous things here, and we know that NHI are already here visiting, then if you see something strange coming from out there, you need to be kind of aware and kind of think through all the paces.
Yeah, I think at a minimum, it needs to be a consideration, right? You can't just automatically discount it as not being that. But I also think there needs to be, like we've talked about, there needs to be, you need to hedge your bets a little bit and say, well, yeah, it could be this, and it could be this, and it could be this, and it could be something we've never even thought about. Maybe it's a space whale or something. I don't know. But the fact remains, you have to be open to everything that is happening. Now, and I like that Avi is pretty much open to that. In my opinion, a 40% chance that it's intelligent life is a pretty low calculation for a scientist to put his name on. It's basically, he's saying, I think it's this, but there's a 60% chance that it's not, if you look at it that way. So I think, when you realize that, yes, he's saying it's a possibility, that's all he's saying. It's a possibility. But it's also equally possible that it's just an asteroid that's tumbling through this section of space that we happen to be passing through. And so it intersects. The sun's gravity is strong enough to catch it and pull it in, but it's not strong enough to keep it here.
Just think, and here's this one is a double-edged sword for Ivy Loeb, and why I understand why he steps out and continues to step out and put his name on the line, because you got to think right now with this object coming in, if Ivy Loeb doesn't step out and say what he says, then the only people really monitoring it are the other astrophysicists who first of all won't even admit that things are in our sky right here above us, above our heads. They're still in the mindset of it takes too long for things to get here. It just doesn't make sense. I'm sure there's things out there, but they're not here. So those same people you probably wouldn't trust with delivering you the information on what this is. And it would only be them, NASA, who we know has a track record of not saying anything, and then the government, who I'm sure would be briefed on whatever the object was. So you got to kind of appreciate, and I know you do, but I'm just saying the public out there, Avi Loeb taking the risk of stepping out there and just making it part of the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, Avi is of the same caliber as John Mack was for abductees and contactees and experiencers. It's somebody that academia knows about. They're very much familiar with their work. And so for them to take a strong stance and even considering the woo or the phenomena as a legitimate possibility, even just to consider it, I think at least puts it on the radar in the rest of the scientific community.
And I agree. And I'm a fan of you take what you know in order to kind of formulate your thoughts on something you don't know or trying to understand. And if we understand that we're currently being visited by non-human intelligence, they had to get here at some point. They had to come inwards. They had to, the ones that do travel through space, because some of them probably don't, they do interdimensional things, but the ones that literally traverse space, at some point they were incoming objects to Earth as well. So with that being said, you know, you can't just assume that everything coming in is going to be a rock. You just can't, because there's other reasons to show you that you should not feel that way. With that being said, because we have a couple minutes here before we go to break, I do want to get into your thoughts on what if it was alien technology, because I just like to hear what you think about that. But before we do that, do you feel like it has been given a fair shake in the press as far as the way they've been representing this?
I don't think so, but I also think that, you know, our news cycle is completely off its rails lately. There's some new attention grabbing activity that's happening, you know, every 20 minutes, it seems like. And unfortunately, I think that the vast majority of the public is just not that interested in an interstellar asteroid.
Yeah, what they should be, though, because
they should be. Yeah, I agree.
Think about this. If this, I mean, which obviously likely is an asteroid or a comet, right? So let's just say that, because I want people who are skeptics coming in saying, "Oh, they just believe it's alien." No, I'm literally on the boat of it's a comet or an asteroid, and I just feel like, you know, a 40-kilometer wide object, period, is insane and should, you know, inspire you to want to see what it is, because, you know, that is twice the size, I think, more 2 or 3 times the size of Mount Everest. Like, let's put that into perspective. I believe they said twice the size, something like that. That's huge. Yeah, that's a huge object to be traveling through space.
I think it's also. Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
No, I was just saying it's a huge object that isn't designated to be a planet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the other thing too is that we're just in a different kind of culture. You know, if you think about when the comets and stuff used to come through when we were kids, you know, like when Hellbop did its flyby in '97. I mean, the country was abuzz, but at the time, the only way to spread the word of Hellbop would have been local news. You know, social media wasn't really a thing. Like, we had America Online for the people who who lived the life of luxury and could afford to have dial-up. I mean, of my friends, one person had dial-up internet with America Online, and we would go to his house and wait 35 minutes for one song to load. So, you know, the spread of information right now is so fast, and our attention spans are so small that something like this just doesn't grab the attention strong enough as it used to. Plus, in the time when Hellbop and other ones came through, we were still relatively close to the space race era, but we're pretty far away from that era now. And I don't know that the community or that society would even support another space race if, you know, they decided. I mean, NASA obviously wants to go to the moon and establish a colony there.
Hold that
never hear it talked about.
Hold that. We'll get to that thought right after the break. Right here with Josh Rutledge, getting in some really good stuff. Aliens and UFOs, the story so far, it may shock you. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this break on Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. See you back here in a minute. All right, we are clear. And Cosmic Joe Chronicles, I am acknowledging you. LOL. You're funny. I knew you were going to say something because I was going through the roll call before the show. I was like, there's Cosmic Joe's name, and it's too late to say it. So now I'm gonna use the time right now to mention anyone that I may have missed. And Cosmic Joe, you are number one. You're numero uno. So I appreciate you coming in and joining us tonight and having a great sense of humor. Also, Thirsty made it in here. Appreciate you showing on up. And let's see. Dead fish cheese spread. You got the Kool-Aid. Okay, nice. Love it. Love it. Let's see. Who else snuck in while we were chatting here? Kurt W75. Appreciate you showing on up here to the show. The Andromedan. I see you out there. Thank you for coming on in. Who else has shown up here? Tyler 420. Appreciate showing on up, Tyler. And Johnny Half. Appreciate showing on up here. And Candice, you gave the super chat earlier. Didn't get a chance. Thank you for that. Thank you, Candice, for your awesome support of Spaced Out Radio. We do appreciate that as I bring that up here. Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Let's see. We have I think we might be current here. I think that might have been. Yep, that's it. That is it. So do appreciate everybody coming in. And as you can see, Jose Sanchez, hey, thanks for coming in as well. We're starting the show earlier now, right? So this is the After Hours radio show. Now starting at 7 p.m. Pacific, which is 10 p.m. Eastern time. So the hope there is to get some more East Coast guests in here for conversations. Also for our East Coast viewers who just feel like it's a little too late. All right. So I brought it back an hour. I hopped in the time machine. I took us back in time 1 hour. And we'll be doing this going forward just to kind of see how it feels. You guys let me know, how you feel about this earlier time as we try out a few of these shows. And I think it might work out though. We'll see. Woo Riders DG, thanks for coming on in. Appreciate you, man. Okay. All right. Candace loves it. Candace says, Rob, yes, East Coast. Yeah, our East Coast brethren and sisters out there. I always feel bad when I have Sir Brian Bowden come in, who's in New York, and he has to come in at literally 1 in the morning Eastern time in order to do a segment with me. I don't feel good about that. So we got an hour earlier, so maybe midnight he can do that, maybe potentially. Or some of our other East Coast guests who normally feel like, starting a show at 11 o'clock or starting an interview at 11 o'clock is too late for them. So hopefully 10 o'clock works for them. And T-Bone agrees. It does make it a lot easier for East Coast guests and viewers. So hopefully that's the case. And we should see. We should get some feedback as we do some more shows. And I'm hoping that it's a positive outlook on what we're doing. So let's see. Also, don't forget, if you could take a moment and look right under the screen, if you're on your mobile device, hit that little thumbs up button. Let us know you like the show. If you're watching from X, hit the little heart button, share with other friends. Let them know that you like the show. And we would totally appreciate that. As well as if you're here for the first time or you're watching this on replay as a first-time viewer, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It doesn't cost a dime for you to do that, and we would totally appreciate it. Benno from Oz 75 says smash in time. I like that. That fits. It might be a thing. Smash in time. Guys, let's take a moment, hit that like button. It's smash in time. Courtesy of Benno from Oz 1975. I like that. That's awesome. All right. Marie K saying, I'm here. I see you. I see you, Marie K. Thank you so much for coming in and joining in the chat here. As you'll find out, I'm sure I know your name is familiar, so I know you've been here before. But for those who haven't, we have an awesome chat. A lot of great individuals out there with great knowledge. You'll enjoy chatting with these individuals. And yeah, we got about 15 seconds left before we come back, guys. Let's get ready to go. Smush that like button, as Mel WD40 says. I like it. Here we go. All right, everyone. Welcome back, Spaced Out Radio After Hours Radio Show. We are on the back half of hour 1 with our guest, Josh Rutledge, talking aliens and UFOs because the story is so shocking. It really is, and it's really an important story to the humanity and human race. So, what you can do if you missed any of this conversation tonight, you can hop in the archives because it doesn't cost a dime. Absolutely free. YouTube.com/at Spaced Out Radio. We would totally appreciate that. So, Josh, you were in the middle of talking about, you mentioned something about the moon as we were going to break.
You know, just with NASA and their Artemis mission, you know, they're wanting to establish a base of operations on the moon, have people living there, etc. Like, I don't know if in today's society, if the generations that are represented across would actually support the expenditure of that type of endeavor. You know, before, when it was the space race, it was because, you know, we had to beat the Russians there, and there was the, you know, on the other side of the Cold War and all of the, you know, kind of fear and things that were associated with that. But I don't know that we have that same driving energy to go to the moon. And so that's where I think, you know, stuff like just the public's interest in space stuff, whether it be, you know, Threei Atlas or going to the moon or the next, you know, interstellar object that enters the solar system, or, you know, supposedly I've heard that we, you know, may have our first signs of an actual Planet 9 on the other side of Neptune. You know, even if that's the case, I just can't imagine it sticking in the public news cycle for very long. It just seems that most of society has lost its appetite for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and you know that you bring up a great point there. I think that's where pop culture comes into play, right? So we have like Steven Spielberg working on a UFO movie. Hopefully, Jordan Peele is doing a sequel to his movie, and once we, you know, those type of things get those other people involved in the interest, or just piquing the interest on maybe wanting, even if it's for a short time, they walk out of the theaters thinking about what that, you know, what a moment like that can mean if they've never even thought about it before. So, you know, that's kind of where I think we'll be able to gain some more interest in space, and hopefully it's at a time where other things are also happening. So when they do go look into these things, they're opened up to all the other current events that are going on. So hopefully it ends up being like a trick, you know, a snowball effect. But one thing that I did want to mention, and someone mentioned this in the chat, and I don't know why I didn't bring it up, but Threei Atlas, one of the other weird things about it is that it's apparently coming from the Sagittarius star system, from that direction, and that it's that's where the wow signal came from.
Yeah.
From the same direction. So yeah, you gotta, I mean, with other things, and that's what I say, when you look at everything and you set everything together, all the things that are weird about what's going on with this, and then the fact that it is also happens to be coming from, out of all the places it could have come from, it's coming from the actual direction that we received the wow signal, which we still don't know what it means or if it's extraterrestrial. I think they tried to explain it away as noise from things that we've made. I think is how they tried to explain it, which I don't know about that. But this is coming from that direction. This object is exhibiting characteristics of things that are currently in our skies. And then on top of that, we have a video showing that that our military or other militaries, I'm unsure who did this, but fired up on a UFO, which for me shows that potentially there is, at least in that moment, the thought process going through their mind that this object is a threat because it had done something prior to the video that we saw, or it was just behaving in a way that they felt was adversarial, right? So it makes you think, then, are these some of these, well, it would have to mean that these other things, or some of the other things we see in the sky, may be exhibiting that same behavior. And then if this is related to wild signal, and then maybe some of the things we see in the sky, is this the cavalry coming in? Did they call the cavalry in? Because if you have a 40-mile, and just think on this side for a moment, if you had a 40-kilometer wide spaceship, how many inhabitants could you fit on that? That'd probably be millions, right?
Yeah, it depends on the size of the inhabitant, but yeah, I mean, if we assume there are size or smaller, then yeah, probably. The other piece, I'll say that the firing on the UAP or UFO, whatever you want to call it, is not the first time we've tried to fire on a UAP, right? We've done it multiple times. It's just every other time that we've done it, the object quickly moved away to where it couldn't be, impacted by whatever it was we were shooting at, missile, firing guns, whatever the case would be. The only difference here is that the object allowed itself to be struck. And I think that's an important distinction, because the object allowed itself to be struck and still remained in flight. To me, it's a flex. It's saying, hey, every other time we've moved out of the way. This time, though, we let you guys hit us and you couldn't do anything with it. So maybe you just back down a little bit.
Yeah, I could see that angle. I could definitely see that angle. And I've always looked at the whole crash retrieval thing, because the question is always asked, oh, they have these super advanced craft. They travel all these miles to get here, light years, and they just come here to crash? Like, that doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense, right? So that's where you step to, okay, are these crash retrievals or are these shoot downs? And knowing how our military is and how human beings react to things that they are uncomfortable with or don't really understand, this is how we address things. That's why I say as well, whenever you see a UFO in the sky, right after that, you see a fighter jet on the scene, or
helicopter.
And a lot of people take that to say, okay, that must mean it's government craft because they're being escorted by these government vehicles. And I don't think that's the case. I think we're seeing craft, military assets that are being scrambled to the location because of maybe some underlying thing that they're doing to each other, right? They're like, we know they're a threat. Oh, they popped up there, scrambled jets immediately on the scene.
The other possibility is that it's I don't know, to use this is probably a horrible analogy, but it's pizza delivery guy, right? You're sitting on your couch, you're watching TV, doorbell rings because your pizza's being delivered. You jump up and you scramble to the door to get your pizza. It could be something similar where we don't really know. Let's say the government doesn't really know when these things are going to pop up. But when they do, they're here for some reason, like maybe even a positive reason. Hey, we're going to turn over our craft, or we got you this cool piece of technology that we want you to investigate. So we scramble our stuff to go escort it to a location where it can drop off that delivery. Yes, this may sound like a glass half empty, half full conversation. You could go the route of it's all negative and we scramble our jets in a threat response. But you can also equally say it's positive and we scramble our jets and helicopters in an escort response. And so I just think, just like we were talking about earlier with the whole Threei Atlas being able to and being open to considering all possibilities, I think the same is true for UAP. You have to be willing to consider it as a threat and as a positive. What's the old saying? Hope for the best, but plan for the worst.
Yep.
I think that's the approach that we have to take. And so when you look at the UAP, missile shooting, there's a lot of important information to be gathered by that. First of all, they fired a Hellfire missile, which is not meant for air-to-air combat. So that means it required laser lock-on. So the drone had to keep laser lock-on with the craft. That means that the craft could be locked on with a laser. What does that tell us about the makeup of the craft? I think a lot of everybody's focusing on the fact that it deflected the missile and kept going. But no one's really focusing on the facts of all the other bits of information that we gathered or obtained in that one little video clip that could tell us so much more about UAP.
Yeah, my biggest thing, and like I said, I think the world or anyone who paid attention to it was more in awe of, and even myself, I thought it was, as I was watching it live, as it was broadcast live. Yeah, I felt that way too. Wow, it just bounced off the thing. That's crazy. So it's showing that we can't do anything to it, or it, even if it isn't the intention, it's showing the world that our military can't do anything to it, and that our skies are not safe at this point, and we don't have control of them. That's what that video showed on the surface. But then as you go deeper into it, it also shows that we are conflicting with these things on some level. And it's like, then you have to think about, well, why are we conflicting with them? Is it because they're the aggressors, and so we're just defending ourselves? And that's secretly one of the reasons they don't want to tell the story, is because we're in an active war with these things, and they don't want to bring that out. The reason why we're at war with them, that is, something to be concerned about. Also, the fact that people say there's other species out there. So this is where, like, that Skywatcher map comes in handy, where we can take these categories of shapes of craft that we've seen in our skies that we know are here, and then figure out which ones are the ones that the government is in conflict with. Because there's likely some that they aren't, and are the ones that are the benevolent ones. But then which one of these should we be really watching out for? Which ones did you guys have to fire on?
Yeah, and I think it's also really interesting too that all the analysis that I've seen from various people across YouTube all assumes that it's a physical object. But when I watch the video, the impression that I get is that it's more like liquid or plasma even, and that the objects that broke off from the back of it were more like droplets, if you will, and then they just kind of got caught in the field of the object and continued forward. There's another opportunity for us to really evaluate how we perceive these things. You mentioned something a while ago about our skies. We are not in control of our skies, and they are not safe. Why do we humans need to control the entire sky?
Right. It's not ours. Yeah.
Right. It's not ours. Right. We don't own the sky. No one can own the sky. So, why do we feel like we need to control it? Also, since you brought up Avi with Threei Atlas, I don't know if you read Avi Loeb's Medium article about that video, but his conclusion or his thoughts is that it's a Houthi drone that was launched in the area. But to me, the behavior is nothing like a drone. I've never seen a drone get hit by a Hellfire missile and just break up but keep going. So
that was so crazy to me that the same guy who is saying that Threei Atlas is alien tech just turned around and says the UFO video is likely some prosaic, explainable sort of drone.
Yeah.
It's strange. When I heard that, I was like, really? That's your take? But here's the thing with that. We know, as far as us in the community and other researchers know, that thing was something we've seen before. And you're right. It could be just a plasma ball. I've thought of that. But I've also thought about plasma balls and orbs. And are they actually just, not material? And I feel like they are material, but maybe the orb is like a protective thing, and there's something inside the nucleus, or I don't know. But here's another thing, right? When you talked about the craft breaking up, and when you thought plasma, I thought that too. But then I also thought liquid metal, like the Terminator, right? So what if it's made up of some sort of liquid metal and that would explain shape shifting, right? That would explain the ability to do that, and why these things at some time appear to be metallic, because they are. And but it's just some sort of liquid metal plasma sort of concoction that we're looking at.
I think bottom line, like I said, it's an opportunity for us to really think outside of the box and not just assume that it was a Hellfire missile fired at a solid object that then broke up and fell to the ground, and we perceive it falling to the ground as forward flight. That's pretty much the summation of all the arguments that I've heard for, that video not being UAP. But, like I said, maybe it requires us to think outside the box to, what if the things that we would not expect, like you said, liquid metal, maybe it's a hard object inside of a casing of liquid metal. Maybe its propulsion is somehow dependent upon liquid metal, like gallium, or what's the other one, mercury in some way. So just that there's too many possibilities. And I think that anyone who claims to be a scientist who watches that video and so quickly comes to the conclusion that it's probably just a prosaic drone or a balloon that was shot down should not call themselves a scientist.
Well, see, then that says that maybe we should be listening to Avi Loeb saying that Threei Atlas is extraterrestrial. But here's the thing: you make your bed, you have to lay in it, and at the end of the day, I hope Avi Loeb knows what he's doing. By if I were Avi, I don't know if I come out and make a statement on that video, right? Especially if I know how it would be perceived in the public. Is it directly conflicting this big story that I'm trying to sell to the world?
Right.
I don't know that that's the best choice to make a statement on that. You should probably just kept that to yourself.
I think it's also like, I talked a little bit about this when I was doing the UFO report on Dave's show a couple of days ago. The issue is that a lot of these folks, like Avi Loeb and Neil deGrasse Tyson and all these guys, they are two things. They are a spokesperson for science, but then they're also individuals. And we as the public, though, we don't separate the two. No matter what they say, we perceive it as a spokesperson from science making this statement. So Avi Loeb's Medium article might have been his personal opinion about the drone shooting, but because he is also professionally making a statement about Threei Atlas, we combined the two together. We said this is Avi Loeb's professional statement around the drone, as well as his professional statement around Threei Atlas. But unfortunately, that's the thing about these folks, is they have to learn that this is the world we live in. And if they want to be in the spotlight in relationship to this topic, and take the stance that they do, then they have to make it very clear when they make conflicting comments about other phenomena that this is their personal opinion, that they've not done a lot of research into it, or whatever the case may be, to try to distance those personal comments from the professional ones.
I can agree with that. I can definitely agree with that. When we look at, I think October 2nd or 3rd is when we were supposed to get the closer look at Threei Atlas. Obviously, we don't have rovers on Mars that will send us the pictures. NASA does. So how much faith do you put in the fact that NASA's just going to give us the genuine photo they took of Threei Atlas as it passes? Do you think we get the unedited, unairbrushed version of Threei Atlas as it passes Mars?
I don't know. I think I would say, and this is going to sound very conspiracy theorist of me, but I would say we get the real photo if it's prosaic, and we get the airbrushed photo if it's not.
I can agree.
Which unfortunately means that regardless of the photo we receive, we have to look at it with some level of skepticism.
Sad. And that's the frustrating part when you have gatekeepers like that. Like, they're the only ones who have access to the cameras. They get to choose what you see and don't see. Just like the whole idea that their Mars cameras are just are open to you on the NASA website. You're seeing everything that they take in. I don't think so. There's definitely, not and the International Space Station as well. They're trying to give you the image of being transparent when it comes to what they're doing out there. But we know for a fact, based on other situations, that is not the case.
I mean, I've been bored before and just gone to the International Space Station live stream and just be watching stuff. and I start to see something weird out of the corner of my eye, and all of a sudden the feed cuts off, and it's like, sorry, technical difficulties. Like, it just seems rather coincidental that that's the case. What's really interesting too is I watched there's a YouTube channel that my kids love, and it's called Dude Perfect, and it's these guys that do just crazy sports related stuff. Well, one of them took an opportunity to go on a SpaceX rocket. So they went up into space, and they were filming from within the capsule of their launch, and they caught a UFO on their filming. So here's a channel that's not related to UFO whatsoever, and they caught one in space. It goes up, it stops, and then it comes back around. Space debris doesn't do that. It could have only been an intelligent, built, designed, flown craft. So I grabbed it and I put it on my YouTube channel, and I think it's got 10 views or something, because nobody really, ultimately cares. But I just thought it's just another idea, though, that I'm sure this stuff is caught by the International Space Station camera and every other camera that looks down at the Earth from space, and they get scrubbed out.
Well, to the point there, we had what was the lady's name? Donna. I can't remember her last name, but she testified in the Disclosure Project, the original one that Steve Greer put on back in 2001, and she talked about she was like a contractor with NASA who worked near the photo department. Said she had walked across the hallway and went in there as someone was editing a photo that still had the thing in the image, and she was asking what it was, and he kind of told her, essentially it was something anomalous, and continued to airbrush it out. So we know that happens, and at the same time, it wasn't the International Space Station this time. It was, I believe, the shuttle mission, the STS-75, I think, which is the one where it shows the view of Earth and then an obvious UFO or anomalous object coming across the screen, and then it just stops and darts back the other way as a projectile, what appears to be a projectile, comes from Earth up through the atmosphere and out into space. So if that isn't, proof that we have something going on, and that NASA obviously sees that and knows about those things that are happening out there, it's one of the things that makes people not like NASA and not trust them, even though, which we'll get to in the next half hour, they came out and made a big announcement, and we'll end up talking about that as well. Yeah, but that we got about a minute left.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've heard the name Ken Johnson. He was a astronaut trainee during the Apollo program. He never actually went into space, but where he was ultimately placed was in the photo room for all the photographs that came back from the Apollo missions. And he has a book out. I had the opportunity to interview him a few years ago for my other podcast, and he has a book out called Ken's Moon, where he talks about all these moon photos that show structures and craft on the moon that he was required to alter to remove them from the photos that were ultimately released to the public.
Wow, that's huge. And that kind of goes into did we even really go to the moon? Did we ever set foot on the moon? We probably got close, or we had something out there, I think, that was able to photograph the moon, or did reconnaissance on previous missions. But the actual human beings going there is something to debate. And there's an argument for both sides. I actually did a show on it and was surprised how solid each argument was on each side. There's a solid argument saying that we went. There's a very solid argument saying that we never actually stepped foot on the planet. But we're going to get ready to go into the break right here at the top of the hour, having fun and getting real good information with Josh Rutledge here, Aliens and UFOs, because the story is so shocking. See you back here in a minute.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the needle.
You're listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we're clear. See you in 5 minutes, Josh.
All right.
All right. All right, everybody, welcome back. Space Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. We're in hour number 2, bringing Josh Rutledge back on stage as our guest here. We have about 30 seconds before we come back from break. Guys, once again, this is a great time to take a moment, look right under the screen, hit that like button. Also, share this with friends. Let's try to get the likes over 100 tonight. Before the end of the show, let's try to do that. Over 100 likes. Let's shoot for that or get as close as we can. We'd appreciate that. And we're getting ready to come back here, guys. 5 seconds. Here we go. All right, everyone. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. After hour number 2, back with Josh Rutledge, talking aliens and UFOs, because the story is so shocking thus far. If you missed any of the conversation, which has been awesome, hop in the archive. It's free. YouTube.com/The Spaced Out Radio, and catch up on whatever you may have missed as we get right back into tonight's show. Let's talk about the latest congressional hearings, Josh. What did you think about those? What were your thoughts on what you saw?
I mean, I think that they were good in the way of keeping the topic in the public space. I think a hearing every, probably 4 to 6 months is to be expected to keep this topic kind of live in the, public interest space. I thought, having George Knapp as kind of really being the center of the panel was an interesting choice. But I mean, he does have a lot of information, that he's collected, people he's talked to over the years. And assuming journalistic integrity, you could make the statement that maybe that makes him equal to a trusted source of information on the topic. I thought the other panelists were great. I love that we had an active duty individual on the panel. It's the first time we've ever had that. And I also love that I don't love that the things happened to Borland, but I love that he was able to come on and talk about the holes in the Arrow process, and how it's really, at least in its early days, was more of a mockery of what it was intended to be. And maybe now with the new guy that's over at, was it Kozlowski? Maybe now it's actually doing what it was intended to do. I mean, based on the interview that I saw with Kozlowski and Neil deGrasse Tyson, it does seem that that's the case. So, I think maybe it was more or less like I consider it like a check-in. How are things going? This is still important to us. We're going to keep trying to move the needle, but I don't know that we'd really got anything out of it that was groundbreaking, that we didn't, other than the video of the item being shot at. I think most of it was for people in the community. It was probably all information we already knew. But again, it's my opinion that the hearings are not for us. They're for the people who are not currently willing to consider the possibilities. So for them, they probably learned a lot of new information that they've never heard before.
See, that's why we get along, man. We think a lot alike, because that's exactly how I walked away from it. And I actually said that during the show. I said that these hearings weren't for us. They weren't. We know all this information. They had these, and George Knapp being there, which was an important part of getting the information to that community that isn't us. He was a historian in a intellect on the topics, the important parts of the phenomena that people should know. So, and someone said to me when I made that statement, it was like, we're in a situation where this hearing, will just kind of go by the wayside, and those people outside of our community won't even pay attention to the hearing. And I was like, well, what it really was George Knapp. And how many sound bites could you have clipped from his testimony in that hearing. And that's the stuff that's going to get to the national news outlets when they talk about the hearing, which entail goes to the people who are just coming around to seeing this as a thing. They're like, oh, George Knapp is just being so concise with what he's saying, and he knows the things that he is supposed to say. And I think that was the win for us, is having someone on the panel that could speak to the phenomena in the way that George Knapp did. I mean, he did a beautiful job in, you know, taking advantage of the moment, because he may not have this moment again. He had that moment in front of Congress, in front of the world, on record, to be able to break down the history and the reasons why we know that these things are being hidden from us. And I think it was just so effective. I went into the hearing, and I tell everybody every time, set your expectations low, and you won't be disappointed walking away from it. There should be a silver lining. I still didn't expect anything really, really groundbreaking to come out, but I was pleasantly surprised to see the video get released, which was mind-blowing in that moment. And then George Knapp's testimony. Those were the chef kiss for me came to the hearing.
Yeah, I would say that the panel, or rather the congressional leaders, were also really interested in, seemed like, how George Knapp got information out of Russia. That, like, you know, several of them circled back to how that happened. You know, it seemed like he explained how it happened like 4 or 5 times, which almost made me feel like either they weren't listening, or they were fishing for some other piece of information to get into the congressional record that, you know, George Knapp had not previously stated.
So outline that again.
So, you know, Knapp got a lot of information from Russia on their UAP investigation and crash retrieval program. And he entered all of that into the record in that hearing. And he said, you know, he had provided it to like Robert Bigelow and Robert Bigelow's group of folks for them to translate from Russian to English. And they had said that this all seems credible. And so the English translation was entered into the record as a part of that hearing. So, like I said, every single time a congressional member was allowed to speak, almost always their leading question for George Knapp was how he got the information out of Russia. The fact that George continued to kind of give the same explanation, to me, felt like either A, they weren't listening to his responses when he gave them to other members, or B, they were fishing for some other piece of information that George had not yet disclosed.
Yeah, I know what you mean. That part of the hearing, it kind of felt like they were trying to test his source and kind of almost discredit him in the moment. I kind of felt like that's what they were doing to him when they kind of were trying to pin him to, like, who, like, he got the documents. Like, why is that important? What are you going to, you're not going to be able to subpoena the KGB affiliate that gave him the records, right? So why is it important to ask that question? So that was weird to me during the hearing. But then also to speak to, as you were talking, I wanted to also touch on the thing you were talking about with Arrow and the whole Kozlowski thing, and maybe he'll be transparent with, you know, his role at Arrow. He's been there, I think, for a year now. And the most transparent thing I think for him to do would be to, if he was being on our side about this, would be to release the files, right? Release what the work that they've done to debunk the all the videos that they've debunked so far. They came out and they put them on their website and said, hey, we put this in a category that says these cases have been closed. And it was like, okay, well, how did you get to that conclusion? And why isn't that being released? Because we would need to know what steps you took to come to the conclusion that, yep, this was prosaic explanation. So you would hope Kozlowski would be the one to step in and say, yeah, here's the work. Here's how we came to that conclusion. That hasn't happened yet. And really, you know, the message is still, as George said in the congressional hearing, people still don't want to go to Arrow, even though they got this new. I think it's over for Arrow as far as being, you know, the outlet to be trusted. Like, that's out the window at this point.
So about a month ago, Kozlowski was on Neil deGrasse Tyson's podcast called Star Talk. And he gave some really interesting information in that interview. So one of the things he said was only that 2% of the cases they've investigated so far are unknown. So I don't know what that's 2% of. If it's 2% of 1,000, what is that? 20 cases. If it's 2% of 100,000, that's 2,000 cases. That's pretty significant. So not knowing the numbers, right, it's hard to say. The other thing he said is around 55% of the cases are not closed, but they are also not solved. They're basically in a limbo state where they don't have enough information or data to be able to definitively say it's whatever it is. And so they're still open. Then that leaves whatever the difference is. So 55 or plus 2 is 57. It's like, what is that? 33% or something like that, or 43% of cases then are closed as solved. So Neil followed that up with, well, are you going to release that to the scientific community so that we can use that information? And he said this is Kozlowski. He said they're in the process of figuring out how to desensitize the videos or images so that it removes any chance of our adversaries being able to know what system was used to catch the UAP, and then they release it. And I've got to say, from a national security perspective, that makes sense. You don't want to tip your hand as to what sensors or technology that you have that could be used to detect, a missile launch or a drone launch from, an aircraft carrier in the middle of the Baltic Sea, but also happens to be able to catch UAP.
Yes, I agree with you on that. And I actually addressed that a couple weeks ago. So sources and methods have always been the thing that they want to protect, and the reason why they tiptoe around releasing things, and it's understandable, as you just said. But then it doesn't make sense that they release a drone video showing them firing. They would never show that, right? Sources and methods, once again, it's in Yemen as well. So it's a foreign exercise, and who knows what it was connected directly to. But you kind of showed sources and methods in that video. You showed the reasons that you gave for not wanting to release videos like this has been thrown out the window with this video release. So it's like, okay, yes. Which one is it? Do you want to show us that you are in conflict with these things and that you fired specifically a Hellfire missile? All this information comes out with the release of the video, but at the same time, we don't want to do this because per sources and methods. Make it make sense.
Well, so a couple things that I'll touch on there. Number one, the video that was released in Congress was not released by Arrow.
Right.
It was a member of Congress. Number two, if you actually pay attention to the video, it's a video of a video. You can see that they're filming a video that's on a screen. So somebody whipped out their smartphone and took a video of someone else playing a video on a screen.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not entirely sure of the legality of bringing that video to light.
Yeah, I agree, and it's the reason why they haven't confirmed it yet. The
right.
DOD, but also most videos that we've seen so far have been screen recordings that have been come out that way. But you have to ask yourself, as a congressional member, as a member of the government who would also believe in protecting sources and methods, as they said in hearings, you would think that you would probably have maybe not shown that part of the video, because and I point out that you could have chopped off the first part just showing this anomalous thing going across the water. That's how all the other videos are. So you could have simply done that in this instance and not shown that part, but you showed the part, and then you also said what type of drones they were and what type of weapons were fired on this thing. So I'm just like, well, what's going on here? And that's why you have to look at other things that happen within this time frame. That shoot down, as you said, that isn't the first time. They've been doing this. And so you got to ask yourself, it opens up the question, have they been doing this since Roswell? Is Roswell a shoot down? And then anything else that has fallen from that point all the way up to this video, it just opens up Pandora's box to, now we know that you for sure that you've had conflict. So how many other times have you had conflict? Are these all shoot downs? Are none of these crashes, right? Because the crash thing still doesn't hold a lot of water when you talk about the skeptics that say they traveled all this time to get here and then decide to crash. Yeah, it doesn't make sense that they would do that and that would happen. And it's, with the video, it's just more pointing to the fact that maybe we are the ones bringing these things down. And it's just funny that they released that video with that being shown at the hearing.
Yeah, the other, I agree. The other possibility is that it's a misdirection. So that we'll spend the next 3 months talking about the validity of that video and not talking about some key piece of testimony that was given in the hearing.
I can understand that. Now the whole, because if you go down the false flag lane, then a lot of these things can kind of tie into that. So a lot of people say it was part of the false flag thing that Greer's been talking about this whole time. And I just can't buy into it because I just don't see why they would confirm UFOs in order to conduct a false flag operation. It just doesn't make sense. So in that case, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say the false flag piece for me is also a non-starter simply because I don't think humanity has done some amazing things, but I don't think we have the technological or knowledge ability to reverse engineer any craft. If we find one and it still works, maybe it's got some scratches and the interior is a little scuffed up and it smells like cat urine, we could probably still make it work. Like we could probably figure out how to buzz it around at level 1 speed, but the ability for us to be able to reverse engineer a craft like that that seemingly runs on some form of propulsion that we have not even begun to understand. Right. I just think that gives humanity too much credibility.
Yeah, I am totally with you on that. And I keep saying controversially, I guess, to some people, because some people just insist on the fact that we reverse engineered. And I'm just like, dude, the evidence isn't there, man. There just isn't. What do you have? And I did say this on my other show on my channel earlier today. They just announced this, Lockheed Skunk Works released the new drone or announced that new drone. And I went into saying how it's still the same design language as everything else has been released, going back to SR-71. So there's nothing new about, there's probably some special things about it, but as far as propulsion goes and the method of it staying in afloat in the air, it's still lift, wings in lift, and then combustion and some shooting out the back to make you go forward. So it's like, where has there ever been proof that we have reverse engineered anything? Where is it?
Velcro. It's Velcro.
It's Velcro and fiber optics, apparently.
Fiber optics, yep.
Apparently. And it's just here's the reason why. I just want to say this real quick. It doesn't make sense because whatever craft has been created in a whole nother star system with different elements and materials and methods of manufacturing that we just don't have here. It's very unlikely that we have the materials here on Earth to put together to reverse engineer one of those. Just puts it to bed right there.
I mean, let's assume for a moment that we could figure out the propulsion of one of the craft. Let's say we could, we couldn't manufacture one, but we could figure out how it works for propulsion. Let's just say that. We would build our version and we would put that propulsion system in it. And then the very next thing we would do is use it in the arena of war. Every major technological breakthrough was first deployed on the battlefield. And that's what we would do. We would claim battlefield superiority. And to think that, the argument that I've usually heard that's against that would be like, well, they don't want the adversaries to know they have it. Like, no, they do, because it would be the ultimate deterrent. The only thing that the adversary would be able to compete with it would be nuclear weapons, and maybe that would even be applicable based on the propulsion. So I think we would use it to that end. We would, at a minimum, parade it around. Even if all we could do is fly it around, we would still do that just to flex and show our battlefield superiority. So I do not think we have anything. I do not think we've reversed and engineered anything. I think we have captured stuff, and we're trying to figure it out. And I also think that the psionics team that is with Skywatcher, in my opinion, they are a part of a government program to develop consciousness pilots, because I think a lot of these craft require a high level of consciousness engagement. And so they're using them just like they did in the CIA in the 70s for remote viewing and such, working to develop. They were working to take pilots that know and understand how craft fly and develop their consciousness abilities to be able to control those craft.
Yeah, that reminds me of that District 9 I was talking about on my show earlier today, where the aliens had these weapons and humans couldn't fire them. They couldn't figure out how to get them to work. And it required interaction, physical interaction with the actual being in order for it to work. Otherwise, it was useless. And I think that's kind of what we have going on here. And yeah, maybe consciousness is what controls the craft. It's been talked about a lot. It would make sense that they would put together a team to try to the best people to try to figure that out. That would make sense. Yeah, and I'm just with you. And just like I always say, the Ben Rich, we have the take ET home. I keep telling people that doesn't mean that we reverse engineered anything. It just means that we have the craft, and we know that they do, because Lockheed Skunk Works is the rumored facility where the Roswell wreckage went after it went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It supposedly went over to Lockheed, and when we say Lockheed, the location in Palmdale, not too far from where I live now. And it is where it's Lockheed, it's McDonnell Douglas, it's Northrop Grumman, all on one little facility called Plant 42 on Edwards Air Force Base. And that's where they think all the craft are being held, and where they're attempting to do the reverse engineering work. And they have a direct connection with Area 51 too, because they have the Janet flights that go back and forth from Area 51 to Plant 42. Yeah, go ahead.
I had heard a couple of years ago that there's some in the Northwest, there's some biological weapons plant or something where like a lot of our biological and chemical weapons are stored. And that was the new Area 51, basically, that was the new location where they could store stuff, because people would be unwilling to go there because of fear of biological and chemical weapons. But I can't remember exactly where that plant was, but I think it was like somewhere up in either like Northern California or into Oregon or something like that. But I mean, it would make sense. I mean, Area 51 is like a world, everybody knows when you say Area 51, what you're talking about. It's world recognizable. I mean, people drive to the gates, to take their selfies and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it would make sense to move any type of like really secretive operations to another location. So,
yeah, Bob Lazar blew the lid off, and George Knapp. They both blew the lid off that place and made it hotter than fish grease. And, so with that being said, that's why you have George Knapp there, right? Because he could sift through all the, unnecessary talk, which is what we've seen in previous hearings. A lot of just blah, 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 and not really walking away with saying, hey, they really delivered something here. And we walk away and we feel like that's what George Knapp did. But as we'll talk about, as we go into our final break of the night, we'll come back and talk about rumors, Ross Coulthard saying that they may be abandoning the UAP Disclosure Act. There's someone within Congress standing in the way. Who would have thought? We're talking about that and more as we come back right after this break. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. If you leave, Make sure you come right back. We'll be back in 5. All right, we are clear. We are clear. And yeah, that's right. Super crazy movie. I gonna think anything else. Fish grease is hot. Fish grease is hot. Believe me. Let's see. Yeah, Sarion, that's Dugway, Utah. That's the Dugway Proving Ground. And I've seen people go to that gate, and yeah, it was. I don't know if that's the same place Josh is talking about, but Dugway has those camo dudes patrolling it as well, and it gives you the kind of feeling of Area 51. I don't know really what's going on there, but they have definitely called it Area 52, Sarah, for sure. As you post here, it's been called Area 52. And one of the only Army posts that carry those kind of weapons. Oh, nice. Okay. Sarah Yami coming with that knowledge. T-Bone saying, Ross, the juice drinker? You know, you got to report on it. Yeah, Ross Kodart is saying that he's heard from someone that they're going that there are powers or forces within the in the Congress that or above the Congress, in the House, I guess, in the Senate, that are trying to stop them from doing anything else with this. And you knew it was going to run into a brick wall at some point, because it's the entity that has been doing this whole time. So yeah, it was just a matter of time. And let's see. So recruited. Okay, good information here. Let's see. In the miniseries Taken, psychics were recruited to try to pilot the Roswell craft. They got tragic results. I have to watch that. Let me write that down. Taken. I have to look for that. That sounds
not with Liam Neeson, I assume.
I will find you.
I have a certain set of skills, but they are not piloting Roswell craft.
Oh, man. That's hilarious. Yep, Mel W40 Rob G is Jimmy Church's neighbor. Yeah, he's not too far away from here. He dances around where he lives. I don't know why. He doesn't ever say. I live in Bakersfield. It's no secret. Come visit if you want to. It's all good. I have an office where I'm at right now. We could meet up, have lunch. It's all good. Hit me up, let me know. We'll set up a time and sit down and chat about UFOs.
I'm not too far from you, Rob. I may take you up on that at some point.
Let's do it. Like I said, I have a physical office away from home, and we can conference room, all that. We can get together and sit down.
And then at night we can go out in the desert and call for UAP. Man,
that's what I'm trying to get to in my channel that I'm doing over there. Social Dig is, taking super chats. Obviously, I have memberships that kind of pay for the shows, but I'm trying to actually get out into the field. I want to go to Plant 42 and kind of do something live from out there. Maybe we should meet up there. Let's go to Plant 42.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, we're gonna set a date then for that, because it's like somebody has to start shaking the branches, right, of the tree, and if we know,
I'll tie a rope to you and lower you over the gate.
And that's what I'm telling. That's what I was telling everyone, that when you think of top secret facilities, usually the gate is a mile away from the facility or even further. You can't see the facility, but Plant 42 is literally right there, like 20 or 50 feet across the fence. So you can film the buildings. You have it as the backdrop. and there's labels like they'll you can go online, figure out what building is what, and it'd be interesting to do something from there. I think the people would appreciate it, and they have a place where you can park where all the traffic, air traffic coming in and out of the base kind of flies right over you. So that'd be cool to have that as a backdrop too. So yeah, let's do that. Whenever you're ready, man. It's only like 60 miles from me, so I can get there anytime. So
yeah, it's about a 6-hour drive for me. So it's definitely like a, stay at night type of thing. So, but yeah.
Well, I have a side house here not here, but at home. That you're more than welcome to come and stay the night.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Yep. Good to go. So guys, you're gonna see a combo, a Rob G. Josh Rutledge combo, Plant 42, shaking a tree and telling these contractors to show us what they got. Because who's doing it? Who else is doing it? No one. Coming back here in 5 seconds here. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio after hour number 2, back half of the second hour. Not much time left with our guest here, Josh Rutledge, about 20 minutes. We've been talking UFOs, aliens, because the story has been shocking and is going to continue to shock. If you missed any of the awesome conversation we've had tonight, it's in the archives, youtube.com/@spacedoutradio. As we jump right back into the conversation here. So I know I wanted to touch on something here. So the abandoning of the UAP Disclosure Act, potentially happening, someone in Congress or in the Senate, is rumored by Ross Coulthard says this, that, they're attempting to kill the UAP Disclosure Act once again, not allowing to, as far as officially get to a point to where the officials are releasing information. Are you surprised by this at all, Josh, or how do you feel?
I'm really not. I'm not for 2 reasons, I think. One is that to not make this a political statement, to just say that Congress just doesn't get a lot done these days. Somebody was going to not think this is a serious topic and do whatever they could do to block it. And then number 2, I think that the part in it that calls for immunity for the whistleblowers might be a bridge too far for some people. Because I think from a whistleblower perspective, I talked about this a couple nights ago on Dave's show. From a whistleblower perspective, all the folks that we've had come forward are government people. But what we're missing and, what lies outside of FOIA is all the private contractor people. Yeah. And so this, UAP, bill would extend to allow contractors who have been a part of programs to come forward and not face prosecution for breaking their NDAs. So I think that's the part where somebody is saying, nope, that's too much. That's, we can't do that. We need to, and it's probably even, maybe even a matter of the precedent it would set. Because even though the bill is written as a UAP whistleblower, protection act, it would set the precedent that whistleblowers should be immune from prosecution, which would then be able to be used for other whistleblower acts that extend beyond the UAP topic and allow whistleblowers again to be immune from prosecution. And so then we potentially would have whistleblowers that come forward or that raise concerns around topics outside of UAP. And maybe for those folks, that's also a bridge too far.
And I agree with that as well. And I know Ross had kind of touched on something about this as well, where it was posed to, okay, well, if these programs are illegal and money is being diverted illegally to fund these programs, then wouldn't a whistleblower be immune to their NDA? And Ross was kind of going into that and talking about that amendment and the fact that contractors would be added to the amendment in order to kind of protect them from reprisals as well. But he did say, when he said that it would be framed in a way that information pertaining to NHI or crash retrievals would be clear to talk about, but then anything else would still be. So I don't know how that, and I think maybe that covers that Pandora's box where everybody can now take advantage of this. I think that might be that. But looking at this, when we talk about the UAP Disclosure Act being blocked, he believes that there is a particular senator that might be standing behind this. I guess his name is Senator Roger Wicker. And whoever it is, whatever name it is, we know the force that's there is going to be the force that's there, and they're always going to step in before it gets to a point to where the secret is out. And I know there was something else I wanted to add to that, but I can't recall. If you have anything to add.
Well, I would just say that, in the UAP hearing, George Knapp several times made reference to, the contracting agencies that are handling, that are receiving this material. And every time he made a point to say, I don't think that these contracting agencies are acting in bad faith. They're just doing what our government has asked them to do. So if you consider potentially that, let's just say, because Knapp named them directly, Lockheed Martin has a contract with the government to receive crash retrieval, materials. But in that contract, it says you cannot disclose to anyone, even other people in the government, that you are receiving this material, or else you will lose your contract and your position as a contractor with the U.S. government will be at risk. If you're Lockheed Martin, you're not talking to anybody, and you're making sure your people don't talk to anybody. So I don't necessarily fault the private contractors for doing what they're doing, because I can certainly see that the contract would be written with such language to protect the program. So, it really begs the question of, is it even the contractors that are pushing, this particular person or any person to block such a bill? Maybe the contractors would love it if the information would come out, because then they could openly source additional people to help them figure out how to make this stuff work. I'm sure they have to jump through all kinds of hoops to get security clearances and background checks and the whole kit and caboodle in order to bring anybody into the program, especially after what happened with Bob Lazar, if you believe his story. So I'd imagine that contractors would love for the information to become more public so that they can openly hire people to help them figure out and solve this problem. I think it's somebody else. Somebody else in the government doesn't want the information to come forward, and so they're using this particular congressperson to potentially block the bill.
Yes, he's getting a whisper from some birdie over here that's telling him that he needs to kill that. And here's what I was going to say earlier that I forgot. The point I wanted to make with the whistleblowers and then the contractors being added to that, which would be a groundbreaking thing if they could ever do that. I'm feeling like the powers that be stepped in the way of that, because they know that there are contractors in the wings waiting to be able to testify, and that it's a known thing. People behind the scenes are aware of who might be stepping forward as a whistleblower. That's why they get attacked immediately, and even sometimes before they come out, because they know that they're going to step out and say something. So I think they have a contractor. And one thing I'll point to is the Ross Coulthard video, the one he released with the egg UFO. And the whole reasoning why that was released, and not being related to Jake Barber at all, but it's related to some total other person. And this is likely a person that's tied in with the contractor, whether on the contractor side. And I still feel like that's one of the shoes that's going to drop that Ross is holding on to, is the name and identity of whoever gave him that video, because it does show, if believed to be true, crash retrieval happening and then being taken to a contractor. So I think they know that information's out there, and they know that people who are directly related to the program who would be in the contractor are ready to talk. And this is a way to make it to where they never will be able to, is just to kill it now. Oh, you should have brought contractors into this, because now that you've done that, you'll never move another muscle on this situation.
Yep, I would agree. And I think there was a comment in chat. Someone had posed the question of whether or not, and I'm sorry, am I supposed to wait and do comments later? But whether or not whistleblowers could be pardoned by the president. NDAs are typically at the state level, and so therefore they are outside of the scope of pardoning by the president. So there can be some NDAs at the federal level which can be pardoned, but if they're at the state level, then they would be open for prosecution just like anybody else.
Yeah, definitely on the state level. Yeah, now if they were to be federally convicted, obviously the pardon would cover that. But I just feel like, and that's why I keep saying this, because in case contractors watch this kind of show, which I think they might if they're working on stuff like that, that step out and take the chance on. And it sounds selfish to say that, because it's like, oh well, you just want disclosure. No, if I were the person in that seat, I'm the type of person that would step out and just say, hey, let's see what happens, because this is something that is important for humanity to know. And hey, maybe I'm the fall guy for this, but it won't stop this information from coming out. I'm still going to bring this information forward, and then we'll see how the cards fall, because I don't believe there's a situation where you step out as a contractor, you might break your NDA technically by speaking, but I don't see a situation where the people allow you to be prosecuted. There should be riots in every city or protests in every city, but
riots and protests don't prevent people from filing charges.
They don't. But if you shake up the system enough to where you have shown that extraterrestrials are not just here, but they're right here, and you can show them, I can show you what they are and where they're at. That's something that I don't know if order will be succinct enough to execute prosecutions in that area, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying. I think, though, it comes down to, for a lot of people, it comes down to protecting their livelihood and the livelihood of their family. Like you think about, we've been supposedly doing crash retrieval since 47. People have been involved in that program supposedly since 47. So why do we not have more deathbed confessions? And it may be because if they make a deathbed confession, they take a chance of forfeiting their pension for their spouse or their children. So I think the unfortunate thing here is that, number one, we don't know the language in the NDAs, but assuming that this is as sensitive as a topic as any topic has ever been, then I would imagine the NDAs or the contracts are worded in such a way that there are generational impacts in the form of you lose your pension, not only for yourself, but the ability to pass it on to your loved ones when you die. So if that was the case, if you had a 30-year pension or a 30-year retirement, but coming forward meant forfeiting that for you and your family, would you think the cause is worth it? Now, Rob, you probably would. You'd probably be okay with that. But I got to be honest, I would really have to think long and hard over what that sacrifice would mean to my family and whether or not it would actually move the needle enough to make a difference.
Right. That's the responsible thing to do. I don't fault you for that at all. I mean, I would definitely go through the thoughts, but if it didn't line up, if it didn't add up, if the future of my descendants and humanity, the impact was greater for them than it would for the government to continue keeping it a secret, then that's where I would have to side with humanity, and that is human compassion that does that.
Mhm.
And that's why I was talking about the governments are made up of human beings, even though together they act as like a machine, in the same way with the contractors and any business, really. But when you talk about the individuals that make up that machine, each individual goes home at night, kiss their kid at night, tuck them in bed. They do all these normal things that humans do. And so at some moment of time, compassion should kick in as they go through the thought process. But then you do have, and I think what has been happening when you talk about going back to Roswell, why some people didn't give more deathbed confessions is I think they sell it the same way. These people in these secret areas say, hey, the nation will crumble. Like, do you want to be responsible for the self-destruction of the United States? And any patriot is not going to really want to do
Right.
that.
Yeah.
And so that if you hold that over a person's head and they believe in that, they won't ever say anything. And it's like, who wants, disclosure would be nice, but if it means the end of America or United States, I'm just not going to do it. And I think
Right.
that's what people are kind of contemplating with.
That whole snitches get stitches mentality, right?
Yeah. And to be honest, America is the top nation in the world. And it's just like being in anything number one. Do you want to give up number one at any point? Like, what would it take for you to give up your championship trophy or belt or being the number one guy? And that's what the conversations that they're having. Like, dude, like if you go and say this to the news outlets, tomorrow the stock markets will crash, America will be no more, and we will be at risk of X, Y, and Z. And it's like, man, they put all
whether or
that
not it's true, right? It's still that
whether or not it's true, right.
The piece that matters is that we as humans, I think you alluded to this even at the start of the show. We as humans we fear what we don't understand. And even if you're a part of a crash retrieval program, let's even say you've seen alien bodies, it's still likely that you don't really understand any of that stuff. Kind of going back to our conversation around, whether or not we've actually reverse engineered anything. We probably don't really still understand where they come from, why they're here, why they crashed, why they look like they do, so on and so forth. I do think it would have, maybe it wouldn't crash the stock market, but it would certainly have a significant impact to the religious culture of the world. And what would that do? What are the echoing ramifications that may cause? If those people who take literally the words God created humans in their own image or in his own image, they would look at an alien that looks nothing like a human and think, well, what does that mean for my God? These must be demons, or maybe I'm wrong, and so on and so forth. So I think the ripple effect that would happen there is significant. All of that to be said, like you say, they go to these folks and they say, hey, if you go forward, if you say anything, it will break the world. It will reset us back to the dark ages. I would not. I mean, I would be really hard pressed to say, you know what, I'm going to take that chance and still come forward.
Yeah, it's a guilt trip, essentially, is what they're putting on people, I think, and just scaring them to a point to where they contemplate for so long if it's worth it, that so much time has passed and they've just literally moved on to other things and probably don't even go back or try to put it away so that they don't have to think about it and move on with their lives. I think there's a lot of that going on, psychological warfare.
Or the fact that Grush and others have come forward recently, maybe they're like, oh, well, they got it. They're taking care of it. I don't need to come forward because Grush did. That whole the whole pass the buck idea of somebody else will do it. There's enough people in this program, somebody else will do it. It doesn't have to be me. The problem is that if everybody thinks that way, then nothing ever really moves.
I was thinking as well when we were talking about, the European Disclosure Act being snuffed out. And I was looking through a note that I had about Luna. One of the things that she had stated during the hearing, and she had stated that that she has enough evidence to move the conversation forward, that they, because it was been a question that I've always asked, is like, okay, well, Congress, how many hearings are you going to have? Because you should have everything that you need right now at this point to go execute, walking up to this contractor or whatever you have to do. And it just seemed like she validated that when she made that statement. And so did there was another rep, I couldn't remember, who said the same thing. But essentially, they were like, it's time to take action at this point. I think it was Moskowitz might have said that. It was like, or Burleson, one of the two. He said, let's take a step, and now let's take action. Like, we've done all the talk, let's take action. And so I think that may have prompted some sort of response, like, whoa, wait a minute. Like, okay, you're going to take more action. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to squash out the Disclosure Act, and we're going to stop talking about it now.
Yeah, I think that, Luna even said, we can issue subpoenas, and I think in some cases, especially when it related to Borland's case, she even said, we're going to subpoena those folks, so on and so forth. So you're right. It seemed like at the end of this hearing, we left with action items, whereas in previous hearings, it was just like, okay, thanks for letting us know. We'll get back to you, that kind of thing.
And one of the things that I had going into the hearing, because I had some things that I wanted to pay attention to, so I wrote down a few notes. And one of those notes was, why hasn't Congress used subpoena power to bring in those responsible in front of Congress, like the actual people who you really need to bring, who George Knapp, I'm sure, he did give a couple names actually during the testimony. He actually said, you might want to look into this guy and you might want to look into that guy. Okay, so let's subpoena these guys. I would trust George Knapp's word on that. Let's get those guys in here to give their testimony. He's trying to give you an alley-oop. So go ahead and take that, and let's bring those people in next. Who would you want to see? I think George Knapp was unexpected pleasure to see him there. Who else would you want to see at like the next hearing that doesn't necessarily have to be someone tied to a project, but someone who would be beneficial to the hearing itself?
Honestly, I'd love to see Bob Lazar.
Yeah, me too.
Under oath at the table. I think he's been getting active back in the community the last couple of years, pretty much since there's like a new documentary coming out about him. I'd love to see Bob Lazar there. The other thing I was going to mention, you're talking about the people that George Knapp mentioned. Yes. The person he mentioned for Lockheed Martin is dead. He died in 2018. So we can't subpoena him unless you want to break out the Ouija board. I think Bob Lazar would be great to have on the panel. And I also think just having maybe Bob Lazar and Dave Grush and, a few of like having them all up there together, asking them similar questions, seeing if they can cross corroborate each other's stories.
Yeah. That is awesome stuff. So we're going to get ready to come to break, or the final break here in a few minutes. Do you have about 10 more minutes in you after the break?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can hang around.
Okay. Let me get you back here because I had a couple other things that I wanted to bring up with the subpoena. Sean Kirkpatrick apparently being named in that. And that's definitely something I want to talk about because he's been called out as a liar. And she said, what did she say? Specifically, she called him. I got it. Oh my God, what did she call him? I know you remember.
I honestly
documented liar. Documented liar. Yeah. That's how she starts the hearing. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good. Okay, this is gonna be great. So we'll go ahead and talk about that for a few minutes when we come back from break, guys. It has been an awesome conversation so far. I didn't ask for questions earlier, but if you have any, put them in the chat right now. And when we bring Josh back after the break, we'll address some of those questions. Please do. And outside of that, guys, we'll see you back here in just a moment right here, Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show with me, your host, Mr. Rob G. See you right back in just a minute, guys.
Conversations that move the needle.
Conversations that move the
You're
needle.
listening to After Hours with Mr. Rob G on the only place where you can own the night. Spaced Out Radio.
Spaced Out Radio.
You've tuned your dial to the right frequency.
All right, we're clear and we're off for 5 minutes. I want to bring up
All
the
right.
magic mic thing you talked about too.
Yeah.
We'll do that. Okay. All right, welcome back. Space Out Radio, the After Hours radio show. We're in hour number 3 already, and the guest Josh Rutledge has agreed to join us back here. So we'll be getting questions answered and covering at least 1 or 2 more topics that I had here. We're coming back from radio here in about 3 seconds here. All right, everybody, welcome back. Space Out Radio After Hour number 3, back with Josh Rutledge, going overtime, talking more UFOs and aliens because the story is so shocking. I'm telling you, just go back and listen to what we talked about tonight. The archive is absolutely free, and it's youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. We consider you going over there, maybe even subscribing. How about that? That'd be a good thing as we jump back into the conversation here. So thanks, Josh, for staying with us a little extra here. There were a couple things that I did want to still talk to you about specifically. And one of those things was Luna, Anna Paulina Luna, during the hearing, talking about, well, first, let's say this. She started off the hearing saying that Sean Kirkpatrick was a documented liar as the head of AARO. Bombshell, that's kicked off the night. Then later in the hearing, she also stated that she'd be open to subpoena him and actually is probably looking to do that very soon. What did you think about all that? Isn't it about time that they finally acknowledge that AARO is what we know it is?
So like I talked about earlier, I think that there are two let's say positions of AARO. I think there's the Sean Kirkpatrick position of AARO, which reminds me a lot of, not that I was alive when it happened, but it reminds me a lot about reading about the Condon report and the statements from Condon saying, I think it's all bunk, but I'm not supposed to come to that conclusion for another, 6 months or whatever. I'm paraphrasing. So Sean seemed to approach the topic at AARO as, nothing to see here, but the Congress formed this agency and they asked me to run it. And so I'm going to run it, but I'm just not really going to do anything that, I feel like, that I think I'm supposed to be doing. But with Kozlowski, there seems to be a difference. I think, and I'm going to say that after that interview that I watched with him and Neil deGrasse Tyson, I honestly feel like Kozlowski wants answers. And he will, whether or not those answers will ever be made public, I don't know. But it really seems like he wants information. He wants answers. He talked about with Neil about how they're going to launch a website sometime this fall where the public can submit cases. They don't judge anybody in their whatever their stated experience was. They instead just look for supporting evidence to support, whatever that person's experience was. So I think with Kozlowski and AARO, it's different. Now, to your previous statement, when it was under Sean Kirkpatrick, yes, it was a hoax. It was a false, department. They weren't doing anything. They had no intention of doing anything. And I 100% agree that Sean Kirkpatrick should be subpoenaed before Congress to basically ask these questions to, specifically as it relates to Borland's case, where we know that he followed procedure and reported it to AARO, and yet he's being blackballed. And he's lost his pension, he's lost his medical coverage, so on and so forth. Somebody needs to answer for that. Because Congress stood AARO up. They put the trust in AARO to do the right thing. Sean Kirkpatrick basically said, that's cool, but I'm not going to do that. He was subsequently removed, but somebody needs to be held accountable. And honestly, Borland's case needs to be reevaluated.
Don't you remember back in the day, only a few years ago, seems like forever though, when they were just considering putting up this office, AARO, and it was just an idea. They said they were going to do it. And we had a more of a public facing option at the time. I can't even recall the name, but what do you remember the public facing option?
No, I don't remember. I know that it seems like that group has gone through like 3 or 4 different name changes over the last probably 4 years.
Yeah.
But I do remember them talking about it being more public facing, and then it was adjusted to say, no, we're going to focus on, government reports first. So, I mean, Kozlowski, though, he talked about with Tyson saying that, we because we don't judge anybody's submission up front, we take them at face value until we're able to either determine what it is that they saw or not, right? That's this whole approach. Because of that, there are many more eyes outside of the government than there are in the government. So he's like, if we really want to see the information, if we really want to see the data, we have to open it up to people outside of the government to submit.
And this is what Kozlowski said?
Yep.
Okay. I mean, I'm open to it, and it sounds good. It sounds good on the face of it. And how easy is it to look like a good guy or a better guy when you're following right behind Sean Kirkpatrick, who was obviously lying about a lot of different stuff with the statements that he made? So it's kind of easy for John Kozlowski to kind of step in there and say, hey, we're going to be more transparent, and yeah, we should probably do this. Well, can we see the first action of you doing said thing? Show us the first action where you kind of, because until then, Arrow is still Arrow, and the whistleblowers are going to be afraid to go there and give their statements or information. So what are they at the end of the day going to really be able to do until Kozlowski steps up and shows, hey, this is what we intend to do, and I'm going to show you. Until that happens, I don't know. But I can't wait to see Sean Kirkpatrick in front of Congress, because now you're under oath, dude. You've been lying all this time. Now you can't. So the Sean Kirkpatrick we should see testifying in Congress should be a totally different Sean Kirkpatrick than we've seen at all these other hearings and different things, because he cannot lie at this point. And it'll be pretty easy to kind of catch him up in a few of those lies. So I just, I'm hoping that that's what comes next, is Sean Kirkpatrick in a hearing. That's the next thing that we get. And then potentially, eventually, the Bob Lazar thing, because George Knapp, I know, is going to try his best to make sure he aligns that to happen. But, as far as Sean Kirkpatrick, like blatantly lying to the public shows that you have been directly picked to do said job. And then, so who told you to do it? Maybe those are the questions that he'll be asked in the hearing.
Now, of course, he could always, it's not a court of laws, but it's like some equivalency of pleading the fifth, right? He could say something like, I don't recall. That's generally the private sector version of pleading the fifth. So, just because he's there doesn't mean he has to answer those questions. But I still agree that it would be nice to get him in there to kind of grill him on, his mishandling of Arrow.
And then some of the, just like with a lot of these hearings, I talk about reading between the lines and then think about what wasn't said. And I think we'll get some of that as well. Like, you won't say that. Okay, well, we probably have a good idea why you won't answer that. So him not answering will essentially be just as good as him testifying truthfully. And I think the whole 20 years from now or 10 years from now, if it comes out that you lied under oath, if it comes to light, something can happen to you behind that. Yeah. So with that being said, do you take that risk? Are the people who are telling you to lie also giving you assurances that you'll be okay if you lie at this hearing? And so you got to kind of think about some of that, but we'll know when he's lying and when he's not lying.
Yeah. So I don't know if we'll know when he's lying, but I think, you're right. I mean, it's kind of like the situation of if somebody says, did you murder this person? And you say, I plead the fifth. The fact that you didn't say no is almost an admission of guilt in public opinion. So if he takes a similar route of gets asked a question and he just responds with, legal counsel has advised me not to answer that, then that's, in the court of public opinion, that's an affirmative.
So let me ask you this: with all this stuff going on, so we go back as we started the show with Threei Atlas, which is something coming in right now we don't understand. We'll be finding out in the next couple of weeks what it actually is. So we have that event currently. But if we go back a calendar year, not even a full calendar year, October 30th, 2024 is when that the video that was released at the Congressional hearing was filmed. And that's showing that is less than a year ago, a calendar year, we fired on a UFO. So you have that. And this may all be coincidental. I'm just going to lay out a couple things. Okay. You have that on that date. Then you have 2 weeks later, the Congressional hearing with Lou Elizondo. So that happens. Then 5 days after that is when the New Jersey drone incursion starts. So is it a coincidence that we fire on a UFO, UAP, whatever you want to call it? Then 3 weeks later, less than 3 weeks, we have objects parked over the east coast of the United States, plus other places around the world. So you have that. Then you have the governments standing up saying, well, we don't know what it is. And, it's playing the total dumb role, like they have no clue on what's going on, and they don't see these things up here every single day. So you got that. Then you have Jake Barber or the video that had been leaked to Ross Coulthard coming out with the egg-shaped UFO. So you have that, which signifies a tie directly to a contractor. So it's like the last piece of the puzzle. Then you get now you get the Threei Atlas. And you just have to wonder what part of all these things are related, if any, and just going down the logical thought path. Like, what would it mean to you if even two of these things are connected?
Well, I mean, I think we have to be careful. Correlation does not equal causation. And so it's easy to look at a sequence of events and assume they're related because we don't understand the details or the specifics about some of those events. I think if any of them were found to be legitimately related to each other, then I might just say that we are on a slow roll of disclosure, in that only those that are willing to go back and do the work to piece together the different puzzle pieces that have been released since 2017 and really get the full picture are really going to be rewarded with understanding the full disclosure picture.
And look, not only that, but NASA never says anything, never actually sees aliens, or however you want to explain their acronym. They come out and say there's life on Mars, or there was ancient life on Mars. This all happens within this time frame. NASA would really, like, we've seen those signs there this entire time. As long as the rovers have been there, we've seen signs that there was water and all these things that would lead you down a path to figure that there was probably life at some point there. So for them to come in this moment and hold a press conference after everything they said to the opposite, and they come and confirm ancient life on Mars, it just is weird to me that all this stuff happens in this small window of time, less than a calendar year. All these events we're talking about. And it just feels like something is on the horizon. And the thing that I always look back to is the Ross Coulthard statement of him talking to people in the know who say we're on borrowed time. And you have to just, you have to just at least think about it. Because once again, just like Avi Loeb, this may just be a comment, but you at least have to think about it, because there's still the chance that it is this other thing.
Well, and I mean, it's also the chance that, like the movie Don't Look Up, that it is a comet and it's not going to pass by Earth, but it's going to hit Earth, So I mean, there's always that possibility too. That's
been in the back of my mind.
True. And it kind of gets back to the idea of, if you could know the date and time that you were going to die, would you want to know? And I'd say, like, I've asked that question to people, and half the people I asked say, well, yeah, because then I could, really appreciate everything that life has to give me. And then the other half are like, well, no, I'd rather just, it just happen and not really know. And so, it's, if that's the case, where it's just some, this planet has seen a lot of extinction events, and maybe we found to reach a technological ability to be able to predict when the next one is going to hit. And there's really nothing that we or the civilizations can do about it. And so let them just be. And then one day, it happens. So I don't want to send anybody off to bed, feeling like, I have some insight. I don't. I'm just, that's always a possibility. And so I think all of that being said, you're right. It does feel like, though, that we're edging closer and closer to some significant event, whether that be disclosure in the form of, like the movie, what is it? Well, not Area 9. No, what is it? With the aliens that, the park over South Africa.
District 9. I talked about that earlier today. Yeah.
I mean, whether it be like something like that, where they show up and they just park their ship and they're like, help us or whatever, or it's, they like in Superman, Man of Steel, Zod takes over the TV and gives the announcement. Maybe it's something like, who knows? But it feels to me like we are marching towards some event which will change our understanding of our reality. But I don't have any indication that what that event will be. But based on what I'm seeing so far, it does feel like that event is coming regardless of the preparedness of our government.
I can agree with you on that. It out of all those things we just lined up, that on that timeline, is just the two things that in a normal situation would never happen. I feel like is the government releasing video of firing on a UFO. I just don't ever see a situation where that happens. And then I also don't see a situation where NASA just comes out and says, hey, yeah, we found life, ancient life for sure, on this other planet. I just don't see a world where those two things happen and then happen right next to each other. It's like, it just feels, as you said, like something's being prepared for in the background. So life on Mars is not shocking to most of us. We figured that's probably the case. Yeah. We probably came from there as well. If they dig, they'll probably find bones and things of that nature. But I know you wanted to talk about, and I want to get to the Magic Mike Skywatcher thing. We'll talk about that because I'm not fully clear on what that is.
Sure. This was, I think, Thursday during the day. Russ Coulthart released an interview with a gentleman named Mike Batista, also goes by Magic Mike Batista. And he basically claimed that he's a former psionics for the Skywatcher organization. And he was doing a psionic event in his backyard at his personal home. And he saw a craft coming over and he asked to meet them. And they said, sure, put your dog away. So he went inside and put his dog away. And when he came back out, something like was ejected from the craft and floated down. And as it floated down, it morphed and changed into a couple of different things. And he took these little like videos and stills that are highly pixelated. And so it's really hard to really tell or see anything. But then, he said eventually it landed in his backyard and it was like a bluish being with a purple skin tight suit standing in front of him. And he was like, I'm just staring at it and it's staring at me. And he's like, and there's a chicken in my backyard. So my chicken's just standing there, which I think would be a hilarious scene for like Dirty Filth to illustrate.
For sure. Is that the one where I think he showed a video of what he's calling an object powering up or kind of displaying or glowing, like he's talking to it saying glow? Yeah. Okay. So it's like sometimes he says it looks like it's got wings like an angel, and then now I don't know. It's very pixelated. It's really hard to really know what he's seeing. He's shooting it on a Samsung Galaxy phone, which I've got one, and it does amazing pictures, but video at night is less to be desired. So I mean, I don't know. It's an interesting concept or idea that
if you have the ability to interact with these craft as a part of Skywatcher and you retire or leave Skywatcher, you wouldn't, it's not like you turn in your equipment and you can no longer do this activity. So it would make sense that any one of the psionics could be able to do this activity outside of, their involvement with the agency. So, I mean, Russ seemed to give him a lot of credibility. Now, Russ was playing the videos back and he was picking out details that I didn't really see. So I think in that regard, Russ was kind of maybe stretching a little bit as to what he was seeing. But it's an interesting thing. And I will say that there's one still that Mike Batista has that matches a picture that I have taken with a thermal camera in my house of an entity standing in front of a window. So I plan on going to grab that. I'm going to throw those two pictures side by side and put them up on YouTube channel at some point and let people be the, let other people decide. But it's pretty amazing the similarities between the still that he has and the picture that I have. So
I'm under the belief that these things are definitely walking around Earth. There's a video I always show, which is labeled the Dobby alien. This is alien walking down the driveway. And some people just swear that it's not what it is. And I just totally feel like we're watching a video of an extraterrestrial walking on the ground of Earth. And there hasn't been anything that's kind of debunked that. And the side-by-side thing is a good idea. I know I saw recently the Compton alien video where someone had done that, and they said it was this particular type of alien, which actually had the same sort of shaped head and kind of framework. And so I think there's probably a lot of that going on, and we should look further into that. But I'll tell you this. This Mike Batista, I'm going to look more into him, but I think you probably should drop the Magic Mike part because I think that's a stripper name. I think that's like a male stripper.
Yeah, well, that movie,
right?
With Tanning, whatever, Channing Tatum or whatever. Yeah.
So if you want to be taken seriously, we got to probably drop that part of it, and at the very least, guys, if we're going to go into this, so we'll see what happens with that. So I appreciate the work Ross Koldar does, but I do feel sometimes the stuff is kind of out there in a place where we probably shouldn't be talking about that yet, where we still should be talking about the basic stuff. And I think he sometimes takes us down a road where we are even getting more woo than you'll find on this channel at sometimes, right? And it's just, I don't know if that's the conversation to have on the national stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think Russ is kind of like we talked about earlier with Avi and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Russ is a community, I'll call him a community leader when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, he's breaking boundaries with these interviews and things that he's doing. But he's also a guy who is learning and growing in his own experience with the phenomena. And he brings people that journey that he's on personally. But he needs to learn how to separate his personal journey from his professional representation of just general, groundbreaking information. Because when you hear Russ talk about some of the things he does on his personal podcast, most people don't look to see if there's a News Nation stamp in the upper left-hand corner. You just assume that he's representing News Nation and vice versa. So that's where I think, again, you have to do things to somehow distance or at least set the expectation that what you're talking about is your personal experience, your personal opinions, whatever the case may be. And I would hope that because I don't put, MUFON Josh or whatever behind my signature, that when I'm on these shows, I am not representing MUFON. I'm representing myself and my personal opinions about the topic. Do I investigate for MUFON? Yes. But I don't represent MUFON in my expectations, in my communications.
I agree. And I think him growing as we see into the phenomena, you have to recalibrate yourself. And I have to do that as a host myself. I talk to so many people about the phenomena but I always have to recenter myself and remember that we still have to come from a middle of the road perspective. It's been a pleasure having you, Josh, here tonight. I do appreciate you coming in. We're going to be back in hour number 3, the back half, with Tales Untold, Steven Stockton, and more. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after the break. All right, Mr. Rutledge, we are clear. Appreciate you coming in and always having awesome conversations. We're going to do it again. I know you're doing the week show with Dave now, so but still come by. You know, we still got to have you on and have conversations over
here.
Yeah,
it's always great conversation, man. I really appreciate it.
All right, Josh, have a great rest of your night, man. Thank you. And
thanks, everybody.
Care. All right, guys, that is Josh Rutledge in the building, having an awesome conversation once again. You know, as we always say, if you missed any of this stuff, hop in the archives. It's absolutely free. youtube.com/@spacedoutradio. As we prepare to get into some Steve Stockton here right after the break. Actually, let me bring up the image. All right. All right, so we'll be ready for that when it comes up. But once again, conversations that move the needle. That's what we do here. You know, usually in after hour number 3, we have our after hours wrap up with Drew Banke. As you know, he's been on this crazy move and reestablishing himself, being kind of off the grid like he is. And I know he's preparing to come back here soon. And so we'll have him back in hour 3, guys, coming back. I can't say the date, but pretty soon here. So with that being said, I hope everyone has enjoyed the show. Let's take another moment again, in case you forgot earlier or didn't have a chance. Let's just look right under the screen. There should be a like button. Please consider going ahead and hitting that like button. Let us know how you felt about the show thus far. And it helps us kind of let YouTube know what you guys think about the show. And leave comments as well. I hear comments helps the algorithm. And also liking or disliking, however you feel about the video. So we'd appreciate either way if you do that. And Polly Rotterman saying, thank you, Robbie G. Hey, thank you, Polly Rotterman, for being who you are and coming in and joining the conversation with us. We appreciate you. Not knowing what time it is out there, you're on the other side of the world, which is awesome that we can have these conversations globally, right? With people from all around the world tuning in, different countries, different continents, coming in to do what we do here. So awesome stuff as always. I'm going to get ready to let me set up some stuff here for Steve Stockton. And okay. All right, we got about 2 minutes before we come back from break. And let me see. Comment from earlier tonight, Jose Sanchez was saying Moon is a business interest decision of NASA and others right now more than anything else. Mining equals money. Yeah, I mean it's just if we ever went, I just have a hard time understanding why they can't just go back. I just can't understand why they can't just go back. It doesn't make sense to me. Really doesn't make sense, especially if we're supposed to be reverse engineering things that can take ET home. Well, it can take us to the moon, right? It can get us there, and I just you got to look at what we know, right? And it kind of lays out. It kind of answers some questions for you. And I think it's always a cool thing. Let me see. This is interesting, Polly, and I hadn't heard of this. I'll look into it, and maybe we can address it on an upcoming show. The argument between Luna and Laszlo. Why is Luna retracting from her statement about having seen dead alien pics? didn't hear that she actually did hear or see dead alien pics. So that's interesting to know, Polly. I'll have to look into that. Send me, if you can, because you're awesome like that, send me a link to my Facebook Messenger so I can take a look at that. I would totally appreciate it. We have about 20 seconds left before we come back here from break. Really quickly, do you think the release of Age of Disclosure documentary, Stratton's book, Spielberg's Disclosure, and another movie David Gress consulted on will move the needle in 2026? Yes. Quick answer. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Spaced Out Radio, the After Hours radio show, after hour number 3, back half of the show. We have about 20 minutes left in the show, which means we have enough time to get in some Steve Stockton Tales Untold Missing Person Mysteries, and then maybe a UFO and weird news story of the week. We'll see what we do, but guess what? If you missed the conversation with myself and Josh Rutledge, it was totally awesome. You got to hop in the archive. It's found at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. So as we go ahead and get the end of this show together, we're going to go ahead and jump into some Steve Stockton Tales Untold Missing Person Mysteries. And we once again appreciate Steve being part of the show. And we value his input here at Spaced Out Radio. Let's go ahead and jump right on into that. And here we go.
Welcome to Tales Untold and Missing Persons Mysteries on Spaced Out Radio's After Hours. My name is Steve Stockton, and I'm here to take you on a journey of mysteries, legends, and true stories. Come, join me on this strange adventure of Tales Untold and Missing Person Mysteries.
Mitchell Weiser, age 16, also known as Mitch, and his 14-year-old girlfriend, Benita Mara Bickwit, also known as Bonnie, were reported missing after being seen hitchhiking along a highway in Narrowsburg, New York. They were heading northwest towards a town called Watkins Glen, 107 miles away. The date was Friday, July 27, 1973, and the couple were desperately attempting to hitchhike their way to the Watkins Glen Summer Jam concert. The concert was a huge affair, boasting performances by the Allman Brothers, the Grateful Dead, the band, and many other popular artists of the time. Approximately 600,000 individuals were in attendance at the concert, earning it a spot in the Guinness Book of World Records. Out of the massive crowd that numbered well over 500,000, only 2 individuals vanished without a trace, Bonnie Bickwit and Mitch Weiser. No one has seen or heard from them since they attended and participated in the event. Mitch was a resident of the Flatbush neighborhood of Brooklyn, New York, and had initially intended to go to the concert with his friend, Larry Marion. However, due to Larry's mother's restrictions, Mitch asked Bonnie to join him instead. Bonnie and Mitch had been together for about a year when he decided to take time off from his summer internship at a photography studio in Coney Island to attend the event. He was determined not to miss it. He was overjoyed when Bonnie, who had been a parents' helper at Camp Wilmette during the summer in the Catskill Mountains, decided to join him. She had attended the camp as a child and cherished her time there. However, when her boss wouldn't approve her time off to go to the concert with Mitch, she quit on the spot and told him she would be back after the concert to collect her personal belongings and final paycheck. With worried expressions, Mitch's mother Shirley and his sister Susan pleaded with him to reconsider attending the concert. Both of them strongly believed it was a poor decision. Yet, he refused to change his mind and was determined to go. Shirley stepped in and offered him some money to cover his travel expenses there and back. At that moment, Mitch was already making his way out the door. It's unclear if he didn't hear or if he was purposely ignoring her, but with only $25 in his pocket, he left without a second glance and never returned. He would never step foot inside his home again. Mitch rode a bus to Narrowsburg and then hopped on another one to Camp Wilmette, where he arrived around midnight on Thursday. By this point, he was almost completely broke. He made sure to call his mother and sister to let them know he arrived safely, but also that he had very little money left. His mother and sister were understandably worried and tried once again to convince him not to go. But Mitch assured them that he would be fine and promised to see them when he returned home on Sunday. His plan was to hitchhike 150 miles northwest so he could attend the outdoor concert with Bonnie. After spending the night at their campsite, they had breakfast on Friday morning before embarking on what they thought would be an exciting adventure. A kind man in a pickup truck offered them a ride back to Narrowsburg, and they gratefully accepted before making their way to Highway 97. Using a homemade cardboard sign, they hitchhiked and asked for a ride to the concert. When the truck driver glanced back one last time, little did he know that it would be the final confirmed sighting of the two teenagers. As Sunday night passed without a call or appearance from Mitch as he promised, his family grew increasingly concerned. The next day, they were filled with worry and dialed Camp Wilmette to speak with Bonnie. To their dismay, they discovered that Bonnie also did not return on Sunday, and no one had heard from her either. Susan and Sidney Weiser, Mitch's sister and father, drove all the way to Watkins Glen to search for the two teenagers, while Mitch's mother, Shirley, waited anxiously at home. Meanwhile, Bonnie's parents, Theodore and Ray, were unaware of their daughter's disappearance since they were vacationing in Cape Cod. Upon hearing the devastating news, they rushed to Camp Wilmette without hesitation. They reported their daughter was missing, hoping for assistance in finding her. However, their hopes were quickly dashed as the police brushed off their concerns and chalked it up to another pair of teenagers who had run away after attending a concert. Just 3 days before her disappearance, Bonnie had sent a letter to her parents. In it, she expressed her happiness at Camp Wilmette and how much she valued the freedom she had there. She also mentioned that when she returned home, she hoped her parents would give her more space to grow and travel. This last part gave them hope that perhaps she had gone on a trip and would contact them soon. After the authorities refused to help with any investigation into their missing children, both Bonnie and Mitch's parents decided to let them explore their freedom for a while. They waited patiently for school to start again, hoping their kids were just traveling on their own. However, when neither of them showed up for the first day of school, all the parents feared the worst. Described as a sweet boy with shoulder-length hair pulled back in a ponytail, tortoise-shell glasses, and hazel eyes, Mitch was known for his love of baseball, his girlfriend Bonnie, photography, and the Grateful Dead. He even named his dog Casey Jones after one of the band's classic songs. His friends admired him for being courageous and rebellious. According to his sister Susan, he was a talented and gifted individual. She kept a box filled with her brother's belongings as a memento of the brother she loved dearly but lost too soon. Among the items in the box are his old tortoise-shell glasses, his poetry, ticket stubs from the 1969 Mets World Series, trading cards from the 1964 and 65 New York World's Fair, and a large birthday card made by Mitch's friends on his 15th birthday. At just 4 feet and 11 inches, Bonnie was a petite young girl weighing around 90 pounds. She had a face full of freckles and long brown hair. Her close friends often referred to her as a free-spirited individual with a sweet disposition, sharp intellect, strong determination, and fearlessness. Music was one of her passions, and she particularly adored the Allman Brothers Band. Bonnie was a student in gifted classes, and instead of going to a traditional high school, she chose to attend the experimental John Dewey High School. That's where Mitch and Bonnie first crossed paths and bonded over their shared academic successes. With impressive GPAs and ambitious plans for the future, it seemed unlikely that they would simply vanish without a trace. To make matters more suspicious, they had secretly exchanged wedding rings, leading the police to believe that they may have deliberately disappeared together. Even after 6 weeks of no contact, the police remained doubtful and dismissed the disappearance as simple teenage runaways. Frustrated by their lack of action, the parents of both missing teenagers took matters into their own hands and launched independent investigations, tirelessly working to bring attention to the case. In 1973, despite the passionate pleas for these two distressed families, investigators from 3 different counties in New York chose to ignore their cries for help and refused to launch an official investigation. Despite assurances from the NYPD that they would inform other agencies nationwide about the missing teens, they failed to do so. As a result, the Sullivan County Sheriff's Office also neglected to open investigation on the case. On the 25th anniversary of the disappearance of the teenagers, Bonnie's sister, Cheryl Kagan, decided to launch an investigation to finally uncover the truth behind her sister and Mitch's fate. To her dismay, she discovered that the original case files, notes from investigators, dental records, and a list of potential witnesses had all been lost by both the Sullivan County Sheriff's Office and the NYPD's Missing Persons Squad. As a result, crucial information was not entered into the FBI's National Crime Information Center. A former detective from Sullivan County named Anthony Suarez confessed that he had been assigned to the case in 1994, but never attempted to contact the original investigator or make any effort to solve the mystery of Bonnie and Mitch's disappearance. Anthony Suarez passed away in May of 2020. Now, in the year 2000, a man came forward with a remarkable tale. Unfortunately, it was never confirmed, and the man has since passed away. In summary, he claimed to have hitchhiked with Bonnie and Mitch, who were desperately trying to get home from a concert they couldn't reach. They were supposedly picked up by an orange VW bus, but the driver pulled over when things got too intense. The group stopped at the Susquehanna River for a swim, but unfortunately, both Mitch and Bonnie were swept away by the strong current. The driver left, but promised to contact the police, so the other hitchhiker saw no need to do so himself. Eventually, he did meet with investigators at his own expense, and now the police believe his story is the most likely explanation for what happened to the missing teens. Nevertheless, the families remain doubtful and are waiting to hear from the driver or any other potential witnesses. However, despite their efforts, no one has stepped forward with any information about the incident. This case remains unsolved. Next up, we have the case of JoJo Dillard. On November 9th, 1995, 21-year-old JoJo Dillard left her home in Callan, County Kilkenny, to take a bus to Dublin, where she was supposed to meet up with friends. After spending the afternoon at Bruxelles Pub on Grafton Street, she planned to take the bus back home around 10 p.m. However, she missed the last bus of the night and had to board a different one that would take her somewhat close to her final destination in Nass, County Kildare. With no other plans for the evening, she hopped off that bus and began hitchhiking. This was a common occurrence at the time. After hitchhiking her first ride to Moon, JoJo called a friend from a payphone. She promised to be home soon, as someone had just pulled over and offered her a ride while she was making the call. As soon as she hung up, she presumably got into the car and was never seen or heard from again. Even though her family continuously asked for updates and assistance, the police initially refused to provide any help. They believed JoJo voluntarily disappeared and would reappear on her own eventually. During the evening when JoJo Dillard disappeared, a truck driver claimed he saw a young woman running naked through Moon. The driver and his boss were traveling through the area at the time and spotted the visibly distressed woman, but they did not stop to offer assistance. They did, however, call the police and were promised that someone would immediately go to the location and investigate. The driver claimed that he later learned the woman was not JoJo, and authorities confirmed that it was actually someone else. Now, the murder of JoJo was only recently declared by authorities, and now the police are searching for any traces of her remains. The case was reopened a few years ago, and the Police Service of Ireland issued a statement to the public and JoJo's family. They now believe she was a victim of homicide and that her cause of death was most likely due to violent means. This case is filled with an extraordinary amount of information, largely due to the relentless effort of JoJo's family, particularly her devoted sister. They've taken it upon themselves to investigate the case, feeling let down by the authorities from the get-go. Hiring investigators and following leads has become their own responsibility. Despite all their efforts, the truth behind JoJo Dillard's disappearance remains elusive, and sadly, she is not the only young woman to go missing in that area. Next, we have Jamie Herdman. At only 26 years old, Jamie Herdman was a skilled chef from Whakatane, New Zealand. He had failed to work at a furniture removal company in Broome, Western Australia, when he disappeared. During his free time, Jamie poured his passion into renovating a Nissan utility van that he dreamed of taking for a cross-country trip across Australia. After completing his project and waiting for the perfect moment, Jamie finally set off on his long-awaited road trip. Jamie's family reported him missing on December 5, 2006, when they couldn't reach him during his trip. An investigation was launched, and authorities discovered that Jamie was last seen hitchhiking at Dally Waters, approximately 317 miles from Darwin, where his family believed he was headed. His van, which had a history of overheating, was quickly located abandoned near a roadhouse on Stewart Highway. Inside the unlocked van, authorities found Jamie's clothes, phone, credit cards, toothbrush, and some cash. However, his keys were missing. In November of 2006, Jamie made the unusual decision to travel through the center of Australia on his way to Dally Waters. His brother Carl described this as bizarre. Jamie was an avid fisherman, leading his family to believe that he would have more likely chosen a route along the coast. However, Carl reported that Jamie had left Broome suddenly and without informing anyone, not friends, family, or even his employer. The family suspected that Jamie may have received a warning from a friend about someone who was after him or planning to harm him in some way. Everyone held on to the hope that Jamie was simply unaware of the search efforts to find him and that he was out there, somewhere, continuing his journey and still safe. There was also the possibility that he had become stranded in a remote Aboriginal community, cut off from the rest of civilization due to severe flooding. But as more time passed, without any word from Jamie, it became increasingly unlikely that he would be found alive. Despite extensive search efforts on land and in the air, no trace of Jamie or any clues as to his whereabouts have ever been discovered. He remains missing to this day, along with many others who have traveled through the isolated Australian outback and never returned home. And finally, Joshua Jones. Joshua Jones, a 29-year-old man from Hurst Rise in Matlock, Derbyshire, England, left his home on December 12, 2020 at approximately 11:30. He told his wife, Talia, that he was going to the pharmacy and would be back soon. Before leaving, he kissed his 2-year-old son and wife goodbye, but never returned. At around noon, CCTV footage captured Joshua at a department store and then later at a nearby Sainsbury grocery store. Witnesses reported seeing him hitchhiking on the A632 towards Chesterfield at around 4 p.m. Prior to his disappearance, Joshua had texted his wife saying, "I love you to the moon and back." This mysterious vanishing led to multiple reports to the police about potential sightings of Joshua. However, no one has been able to locate him since. When he disappeared, he'd been wearing a gray super dry jacket and blue jeans. The sleeves of the coat were light colored and the inside was green. Other identifying features include a Japanese-inspired tattoo on his right arm featuring a dragon, a koi fish, and a crane. On his left wrist, there was a tattoo in Talia's handwriting that read, "To the moon and back," with a red rocket and runes surrounding a moon inside. Despite the efforts of authorities, including drone searches, mountain rescue teams, and a helicopter, Joshua Jones could not be found, nor any information about his disappearance. There are no leads or evidence in this case. His wife claimed that she wasn't surprised that he couldn't be seen on CCTV footage because there were only cameras in central Matlock. Talia also mentioned that her and Joshua had often talked about leaving society behind and building a treehouse to live in. During the pandemic and lockdowns, Joshua struggled with feeling trapped and anxious. He refused to seek medical help, believing time would heal his wounds. Talia remains hopeful that her husband is still alive and possibly living in the wilderness, as he was skilled in survival and loved the outdoors. Now, there is no record explaining the reason that he would have had to possibly leave his wife and son behind intentionally. However, the day before he vanished, his car had broken down, and both he and Talia were concerned about the expenses of getting it fixed and how that would affect plans to purchase Christmas gifts. On top of that, rent was due, and they had yet to shop for their holiday meal. Talia speculates that the stress of their life together may have pushed him to flee. Unfortunately, there is no further information on this case, and Joshua Jones remains missing to this day.
Wow, awesome stuff there, Steve Stockton Tells Untold Mispersoned Mysteries. We're going to try to fit a UFO and news story in here, so we're just going to jump right on into that, and here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. But I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, UFO and Weird News of the Week. We're going to jump right into it. AI expert reveals why he's most certain we're living in a simulation. Buckle up, folks, as one AI expert has just revealed why we may be very well living inside a simulation, with artificial intelligence continuing to develop at breakneck speed, seeing the rise of Chat GPT, uncanny valley AI videos, and concerns about the future of the job market. Talk has now turned to what our hypothetical future could look like. Technology muffins are currently debating when AI could feasibly become sentient and which job sectors will be lost to computer-based brains in the near future. But what if I told you none of this mattered, as we're all living inside a simulation in the first place? According to computer scientist Dr. Roman Yablonsky, this is the exact scenario which could be unfolding right at this moment. Yablonsky recently gave an interview on Stephen Bartlett's Diary of a CEO podcast, in which he revealed his predictions about which jobs will survive the AI revolution and a chilling prediction for what's to come in the next 20 years. However, none of this may even matter anyway, as we could all just be a cog in someone else's simulation. If you ever watched 1999 science fiction classic The Matrix, then you'll surely have some sort of understanding behind arguments that we're all living in a simulation. Put simply, simulation theory believers argued that our universe and everything inside of it is nothing more than a computer simulation created by a technologically advanced civilization. The theory was popularized by philosopher Nick Bostrom, who argued to the following: the fraction of human-level civilizations that reach a post-human stage is very close to zero. The fraction of post-human civilizations interested in running ancestral simulations is very close to zero. And the fraction of all people with our kind of experiences are living inside of simulations is very close to 1. If the third scenario were to be true, then it's statistically more likely that we're living in a simulation rather than base reality. AI is getting to the level of creating human-like agents, so virtual reality is getting to the level of being indistinguishable from ours. He continued, if you believe we can create human-level AI and you believe we can create reality as good as this, the moment this is affordable, I'm going to run billions of simulations of that exact one. Unfortunately for us, there's no way to tell if this is real life or if our lives are nothing more than creations in someone else's personal Sims game. Just something to think about as you go about your day. And I don't know how I really feel about simulation theory. I believe they say if we can successfully create a simulation, a simulated world, then we also must be living in a simulated world, is the idea. Don't know how I feel about that, but I do know how I feel about today's show. And I definitely want to thank Josh Rutledge for coming on in, having awesome conversations as always, because we have to move the needle here. Spaced Out Radio After Hours radio show. I also want to thank the man that you hear right there. He's the man that rocks us out each and every show, as he shows us to never say never again, because yes, the phenomenon is real. That means anything and everything is possible. If you enjoyed what you heard tonight, make sure you hit the like button. Also, throw your horns up. We also want to thank our viewers online and listeners on terrestrial radio and digital platforms, when and wherever in the world you may be listening from. We appreciate you for tuning your frequency to Spaced Out Radio, where we do what we do best. What's that, you ask? We own the night. Remember, this show is copyrighted Bigfoot Broadcasting Limited, Spaced Out Radio Media Adventures. It's been a pleasure serving you once again as your host. I'm Mr. Rob G. This is the After Hours Radio Show. And to all you space travelers out there, this is not a goodbye nor a farewell, as we are back, and back earlier than ever. We'll see you next time. Make sure you take care. Same time, same place. Don't forget. We are clear, and it has been a fantastic show. Great after this break that we've taken here at Spaced Out Radio to be able to come back and have an awesome show just like this. We have more to come next week. Make sure you're here. And let me give the rundown real quick because I usually do this earlier in the show, but this is the After Hours Radio Show. You'll catch this show now airing 7 p.m. Pacific until 10 p.m. Pacific, which is 10 p.m. Eastern time until 1 a.m. Saturdays and Sundays. You'll also catch Dirty Filth with Dirty Filth cartoons Saturdays at 2 p.m. Pacific. You will catch Dave Scott running the Woo Train Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Pacific until midnight. Also, UFO Max with Grant and Lee on Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Pacific. And then Element 115 with Lee and Tim at 8 p.m. on Fridays. So 7 days a week, some you can find right here on Spaced Out Radio. We'd appreciate your subscription. Hit the notification bell to know when the next show goes live. That always helps. Outside of that, guys, it has been an awesome comeback show, and we plan to do more. Once again, we want retribution. That's how we shut the show down. And if you don't know, you're about to find out right now. Have a great rest of your night, guys. Take care.
Cause we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution. Oh yeah, we want retribution.